All right, so we're recording this a week early, but there's been a lot of juicy news here at the end of the week. So this is episode 7, technically 8, because we had a follow on from our previous discussion
Yeah.
for Unfiltered, Race Fans Only podcast. We got myself, Blake, and Chris today. We're going to talk about a couple things. We've got the lawsuit news, and then we've got the latest rule changes. So we'll go ahead and start with the lawsuit to give ourselves some context for the conversation. Anybody who didn't read it, the NASCAR's request for dismissal was denied. The judge said, "How can you dismiss something if you haven't had an opportunity to hear the facts? The only way to hear the facts is to have the trial." So we're definitely going to trial, it seems like. And he kind of um, telegraphed that in his initial decision. And then he also dismissed their request for NASCAR, to which NASCAR made the request that the team, that any earnings, which I had asked about this on Sirius to Dave Moody and some of the other folks a couple weeks ago when we weren't sure if they were going to get their injunction or not. What happens to these charters? NASCAR had asked that all earnings associated with them competing as a chartered team for the season go into like an escrow account. That way, if NASCAR prevails, they get all the money back they would have had to pay out. And the judge denied that essentially and said no, because they're still going to have expenses incurred throughout this lawsuit. You'll have an opportunity to sue for damages if you win at the end. So the teams will get that money. They equivalated it to, based on the initial open discovery, roughly 5 million per car per season is what each one would get. So you're talking $30 million out of the first year of this charter agreement across those 6 teams. But that gives us some additional context of the cars, the cost, and everything under the new charter agreement for someone like Rick Hendrick. Well, if it's 5 million a car per year, there's $20 million a year right there, in before any prize payouts or anything, just base charter pay. That's the flat, doesn't matter where your finishing position is. So we now know that it's 5 million a car per year is the base charter payout, which we've never known what it was before. It was always, here's the, you know, rough value and then the 3 year average, but now we know at least here's the base for a slot. So that's good information. Already we've gotten some good information, even if this doesn't go forward, about how the charter agreement is structured. So
Yeah, I never knew there was a base. I thought it was just you had dependent on your finishing position in the points, and then obviously where you finished in each race. I had no clue there was a base
so
starting
I
point.
think that's good. Now, like I said, we now have additional context for what this stuff, what it costs to enter, and at 5 million a year per team. Now
Payout.
look at. Go ahead, Chris.
So that's basically that would be basically what say the last place in points do take Rick Ware Racing. They're going to walk out regardless of what happens. 5 million at the end of the year.
Yep, per car. So if Rick
Well,
Ware runs 2 cars, he's got 10 million minus any sponsorship and points position finishes
Okay.
per race, and total charter earnings based on finishing position. It's the way it was worded in the lawsuit. So if the worst I can accumulate is 20 million, and I have to field approximately $1.2 million in cars as a 4 car team, what, $300,000 a car roughly. So just under a million in cars for most of your 3 car teams, then you're covering a much larger portion of the cost, because you've got to have 3 of those times 4. So basically, if you do the math, a 4 car team, the 5 million wipes your car debt out completely. Now you still have to pay for your employees and everything else, but now that sponsorship money could pay all your staffing and your other stuff, because that 5 million per car would wipe out all of Hendrick's cars for the year, because you've got 1.2 million in cars, because you can have 4 per team at most per the charter agreement inventory, and
it's
he's got
five.
4. So that would be 4.8 million for the 48, 4.8 million for the 24, 4.8 million for the 9, etc. So if nothing else, it expunges all the car cost.
But we don't know. I mean, as just a base, I mean, we don't know how that changes depending on points position. We don't know how that
Right.
changes. Yeah.
But at least the base, NASCAR's or the team's complaints in the old charter agreement, and one of the big points of contention was that the prize money wasn't, or the charter agreement money was not significant enough to cover their cost. So now, if 5 million is the base, you're covering their cost for the cars, not everything, but at least you're wiping out the cost for the cars, is how I see it.
Until you wreck one.
Yeah, until you wreck one. But I'm covering your starting cost for, I'm covering your first four. After that, it's on you. If you want to hire, let's just say, let's wind back to when Stenhouse, for example, came into Cup and he was wrecking stuff all the time in the six. Or yeah, if you have that, that's your choice. You get to pick who to hire. I'm giving you enough money to cover your cars. If you choose to hire somebody who's going to wreck a bunch of crap, that's on you. If you put a Carson Hocevar in there who runs over people all the time and is constantly in conflicts, tearing up your stuff, well, that's not my problem. That's your decision. It's on you who you hire. So I think it's a step in the right direction, at least with that, based on what we learned. But separately with the lawsuit, so the big thing you and I talked about, Blake, and then me and Chris talked about while we were waiting to get this started, was when they posted it, I sent it to you in Messenger. I'm like, read this. We got some stuff to talk about.
We got to talk.
The big thing to me, obviously, was that, and you jumped out to you said, was NASCAR's attorneys in court, so now it's in legal record stone, called the RTA a cartel. And the RTA is the team owners. So you called Roger Penske, Rick Hendrick, Richard Childress, Richard Petty, Jimmy Johnson. Like, you called all these guys essentially a cartel in open court and in the public record. And these guys weren't the ones against you. But you've already released the antitrust clause to sue you. So now these teams can now go back and sue you. So if I'm Rick Hendrick, I'm a businessman. My reputation is what makes my money. You just committed defamation of character to me. You gave me a reason to get off the bench and join Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, Jerry Freese with Furniture Row and say, hold on now. I was playing nice, I thought we had a good enough deal. However, now, if you want to play this way and you need me, okay, now I'm willing to, Roger Penske, same thing. These guys have buckets of money. Like, okay, I'll play your game. Let's go. What do you think? Either one.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just think it's hilarious. I mean, you had yourself in a semi-good spot where you had all but two teams that signed on. So what in the world were you thinking? That blows my mind. But again, we've also watched NASCAR for how many years? For lack of a better term, just like Kyle Larson, step on their dick repeatedly.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. That's
in my opinion, this should have been thrown out the moment that NASCAR admitted that the charter is essentially a what is it called, a franchise.
Yep.
The moment they said that in court, the judge should turn his head and go, wait a minute, didn't you say that's not what these are? And
yep.
He should have thrown it out. He should have thrown it out and said the plaintiffs, I think is right. Plaintiffs win everything they want, and because the people they're suing admitted that that's what the charters are. So the moment he said that, he should have said, okay, charters are permanent. They are franchises, as was said by the defendant here, and it should have been done that moment, because the powers that be called it what the teams want it to be.
Yeah. So some additional context from the here we go, from the article by Matt Weaver, which I do think it's interesting on a separate note, that the only that all the sports media are talking about the rule changes. Only Matt Weaver, who is not, he's the NASCAR reporter, but he's not directly connected to NASCAR media and any of these things, whether it's, Dale Jr. stuff or Sirius or any of those. He's kind of out here on this own, startup called Sportsnaut. His is the only article out there that talks about all the language from the lawsuit. It's like the other teams and but not one person in the people that I created my tweet, my memes for the National Association of Stock Cartel Auto Racing acknowledged the logos or made a laugh or anything because they don't want to burn their bridge with NASCAR. So I just think that's interesting that it's known, all this information. None of them want to touch it because they don't want to piss off NASCAR. But
I wonder if Bob Pockris would have wrote that in his article had he been in town. That is the one time he wasn't in the courtroom.
Yep.
Was when they said that, because he was I can't remember what he said, but he's out of town. I wonder if he would have, because he's a pretty honest guy. I think he would have.
Yep, he's talked about not wanting to ruin his credibility.
Yeah. So
in the open courtroom, the transcripts, NASCAR ultimately said they would have been perfectly fine if the charter system had never been created. That NASCAR, Xfinity, and Craftsman trucks run perfectly functional to them, in their opinion, without the charter team, the charter system. I think if you were to gather up the trucks and Xfinity owners, some of them that, constant smaller ones go out of business, don't qualify for all the races, can't make all the, even physically get to all the races, they would strongly disagree that it's a functional system by any means. How many, small teams have we seen go out of business, or other teams that decided to close up shop? GMS, for example, like it's just not competitive. It wasn't financially solvent for them to do that and be a part of Cup. KHI shut down. Kyle Busch shut his stuff down. Brad Keselowski shut his stuff down. And they were all putting on competitive trucks, but the cost model didn't work for them, they said. And yet Keselowski, it bought into Cup. So what's the difference? The difference is because of the charter model.
Oh, yeah.
So clearly the charter model is what's helping keep, if we didn't have the charter model, do any of us think Colleague would still be around with their lack of performance other than their 1 or 2 wins that they've gotten through AJ Allmendinger? I don't know how they would still afford to compete against a Rick Hendrick or, or that they would have even gotten those wins to begin with without the field being leveled up and getting the money for the resources.
Would Spire still be here?
Right. No, definitely not. Would they have even invested the money to become a real race team versus, Spire has openly admitted they were trading the charters basically as investments like stocks prior to, building up enough to become a real race team. They were more of like a sponsorship or a, what do you want to call it? Like a management agency before they became a race team, really.
Well, so there's a difference also. Look, there has to be a huge difference in the TV money for the Xfinity series and the Craftsman Truck series. If you look at payouts, like the purse for each race, I'm just going to throw out something from late last year. There was a Cup race late last year. Cup was $8 million total purse. Okay. Xfinity was 1.5 million. Now these Xfinity cars don't cost much less than Cup. They're not, de facto, they're probably like, if Cup car is 250,000, Xfinity car is probably around 200, maybe a high of 180, around 180. All right. So there's not, there's components and stuff that are way different, but we're still talking about a race car here, and their purse is far less.
Now their new one, the CW deal is 7 years, and I'm looking for the financial number, but it's in the billions.
Right, but
it's the biggest one they've ever had.
And then trucks,
yeah, 800 million over its duration. Okay, so context of the deal: 33 Xfinity races live. According to US Sports, the agreement's worth 800 million for CW.
Just million, not billion.
That's what it says in the article.
What was Cup?
Oh, this is the pre-start. Cup is over 7 years, like 10 billion.
Right. That's a huge difference.
And no, so this is talking about in the context just the CW starting just the additional races they started last year was worth almost $1 billion to them, and its additional TV agreement. Xfinity was 7 billion over
Okay.
its term.
So that leaves the question:
So
why is
there's
there a
still a $3
person?
billion difference, which is a massive separation.
Right. And in Truck Series, when you saw the purse money,
Yeah,
I don't think I ever saw one over 800,000. That's for the entire, you
Yeah.
know, lineup.
yeah,
That's nothing. How can they afford to run these trucks
yeah.
with
Again,
no
with the cars,
essentially no
if a
payout?
Cup car costs 300,000 and you're buying all the parts and you don't have to make squat, and these other cars were also and trucks were high dollar to create and post. They're probably in the market of 150 to 200, I think is what Dale Jr. said before, to make these lower end cars. And that's only because you're buying. The reason why they're able to do is they bought so much inventory that's used from the Gen 6 and from the Gen 5, you know, that's still reusable in the current Xfinity model. If they had to, he's already said on record that if he had to go to this new format of car and all these things that or some of the other stuff they've done, that he doesn't know if they could do it
Well,
as
the
is
other
in
thing to look at
motorsport.
is Xfinity has the same parts like or type of part that Cup does. The fitted part, forget what it's called,
Talking about the composite
but
body parts.
composite body parts. But the trucks, we're still talking about fabrication, sheet metal bending, and
Well, a lot of the
whatnot.
parts on the Xfinity are composite. They're not all composite,
Yeah,
but the bigger cost for the Xfinity guys is under the body. They still make
yeah,
the chassis, the roll bar
yeah.
pieces, they're still buying the brakes and all those things that you're not using in Cup. You're not using the wheels and the toe links and all that. You're still able to do all the old school stuff. So, but one of the other interesting notes from the lawsuit that I thought was interesting at the end of the arguments, like I said, they said on their actual quote was, if there was any anti-competitive behavior, it came from the RTA. This is NASCAR's lawyer. They acted as a cartel. They said, we will only do this if you give us this. That's unlawful. The judge then pushed back and said, did NASCAR do the same thing in August with this charter agreement with the take it or leave it offer? So how is basically NASCAR got egg thrown in their face? Like, how is what they are doing and suing you for the deal and the RTA any different than what you did to them when you were saying these are the terms, take it or leave it? So, I think a couple weeks ago, you and I were thinking when they had the other judge, Blake, I don't know where you stood on it, Chris, but it seemed like NASCAR had the upper hand. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think
They
very much,
had a huge upper hand with that other
yeah, with the
judge.
other
Huge
judge, I
one.
think they had an advantage. I think momentum has absolutely swung the other direction because this judge, they laid out the schedule. So we have a hearing. We just had the hearing to dismiss. Rule 26 disclosures was yesterday. We haven't seen what those outcomes were for what's
And I don't
to be
understand what
done.
that means. Can
Yep.
you, what is
I don't know how
rule?
to look it up, but
Okay.
I can look it up real quick. A party must make the initial. Okay, so Rule 26 disclosure, unless there's a timeline set by stipulation. This is from the what it is from Cornell Law School. So, or is otherwise stipulated in order by a court, a party must, without awaiting a discovery request, provide to the other parties, and then basically all the information they're requesting, and they have a 14-day period to do so. So, based on that, let's go back to the article here. So, as of yesterday, they have 14 days to deliver initial discovery. Then there's at the end of January, there will be a designation of a mediator. They're basically going to give NASCAR an opportunity to, in 2311, to settle this out of court, which I think it would probably be in NASCAR's best interest to do so now that they're going to have discovery. And they've given a trial date, the end of December of 2025, or January 1st, sorry, not January 1st, December 1st of 2025, we're going to trial. Is the schedule that was laid out by the judge. So they're going to give them a mediator. They're going to have basically all of January to look at information. And then they're going to put them in a room together and say, okay, you've had an opportunity to look at it. NASCAR will have had some time to think about all the stuff they've given the teams. And then you still want to go to court. You still want to, with all the ammunition you basically have given them that you're required to by law, all the financial findings and everything else, you still want to go into a courtroom and fight. That's where the mediation setting will be. And then from that point, they have 3 months of mediation until March 15th deadline to amend any pleadings or your argument. So they could drop clauses, they could add stuff. Other people could join. And then
I really hope that other people would join.
Yeah, I think other people are going to join.
At this point, why would you not?
Yep.
I mean, it's on the teams. It's your best interest to join.
I mean,
you've got NASCAR by the kahunas right now.
Yep. You might as well. I mean, what are they going to do? You already have your charter, so what are they going to do? Take it away? They can't. Yeah. You already signed it. You can only win in my mind now. But June 30th, so the end of basically at the end of the first month of summer is when discovery closes. And then close of factual discovery is what it says. Then middle of September is completion of full discovery. And then there's the mediation report a week after in September. And then October 1st is when you file your court motions. And then we go to trial in December. So there's a lot of different pieces. But if I'm NASCAR, I don't want to get any further than probably the end of January, basically, once they get, middle of March, when they have the opportunity to amend the pleadings, and they can either beef up the case based off what they've discovered or, drop some things. I don't think I would want to go too much further than that, because after that was when we really get into courtroom prep. So, and you're at that point, you're also you're into the first third of the season by end of March. By June, you're trained. When the big stuff is supposed to happen is right around when the playoffs are supposed to start. September 19th, September 24th, October 1st, right when you're trying to make all your headlines about your playoffs and your season, especially
have headlines
new
about
TV deal. You're trying to make all these ratings. The center conversation will be about this lawsuit. Doesn't matter who's winning. Doesn't matter what's going on the track. This will be the discussion.
Yep.
Because it's Michael Jordan, it's Denny Hamlin, a current driver who will more than likely be competing to, lock himself into the playoffs. Tyler Reddick, his team, Bubba Wallace. I think they'll settle. So
I think they'll have to. If they don't settle, it could get a lot worse if other teams decide they're going to get involved as well.
Yeah.
If a Rick Hendrick says, you know what? This guy just told me I was a member of the cartel. Okay. Here comes daddy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think the sad thing is, I think this might change some of our picks from the last show we did.
For who's going to win? Yeah.
I think that's going to open a lot of shit up for Denny.
Yeah. I think it's going to put more. Yeah, obviously, it's going
to
be more
walking on cloud nine.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of stress off him and stress and just unwanted attention, or just attention. He'll have a lot more attention in the race car than he will outside of it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that NASCAR, NASCAR said that they would get the same benefits from 2311 and FRM if they were open teams versus chartered teams, to which this is another interesting thing. I know I brought it up last year with you, Blake, before we, figured out how we were going to structure the podcast. And, we're just batting around ideas when this lawsuit first came out, and trying to figure out what were the real reasons why, if you're getting more money, what's the reason for you to sue them? And Denny's talked a lot about, control over their IP as a team. So one of the things from the court was that 2311's or one of their litigators said that NASCAR isn't just giving them money, that NASCAR has in that mutual agreement for the charter, both parties have to adhere to these other things that are NASCAR initiatives. The Netflix agreement was specifically mentioned in court, which I remember bringing up to you. I was wondering whether or not NASCAR teams reaped any financial reward for participating in it, but Netflix had asked 2311 and FRM to participate in season 2 of the Full Speed documentary, to which 2311's lawyers said they would not have to participate in the 2 exhibition races. They would not have to invest time and resources into NASCAR initiatives, and that they wouldn't have to. So any of these things where they're helping to grow the sport, they're no longer required to participate in all these things that a charter does as part of the charter agreement. In turn of us giving you money and a guaranteed spot, you're going to help us grow the sport. You're going to invest into, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's not a parasitic one. Well, if I'm an open team, it's very much a parasitic one. You're benefiting from me. I don't have to show up, but I'm also not benefiting from all the perks and bonuses of being a chartered team. So why would I let, I think NASCAR mentioned there was a massive growth last year. I don't think they put out numbers, but millions and millions of people watched the Full Speed documentary, and it was basically 2311 for the most part. Some other teams, but they were the ones that were really open about it. But you've got Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, you're inside of this business relationship of theirs, and now you're not going to have that same access. Would they get the same benefit? Would it grow like how Formula One does by having access to all the teams, or would it not? Like what there is with Drive to Survive. So I thought that was a very interesting thing that they brought up, that specifically the Netflix deal, which was something I talked about with you, and that there's all these other initiatives that they're also not required to participate in if they're not considered a chartered team. But NASCAR argues we would still benefit the same way. And obviously, I don't think that's true.
But the teams don't, if teams aren't getting paid, they can't benefit from it at all. I mean,
right.
Why would they? I mean, outside of the sponsor recognition, if they're shown on screen or whatever,
yeah, just the
they're
basic
not getting it. Yeah, why would you want to? If you're not going to get paid for what you're getting, what you're getting shown, why would any team want to do it?
Yeah, because it's just a distraction to my goal, which is to make the race, to win. So, to perform. It's just something else that takes away time from my ability to put better cars on the track, to better prepare each week.
It almost sounds like NASCAR had Teresa Earnhardt write that up for him.
Right? I like that. So let's see, anything else? And the official TV percentage is 47% of the pie goes to teams.
As it should.
Up from what was it, 20?
Yeah.
I mean, but honestly, when NASCAR already owns over 50% of the tracks, I mean, that makes sense. Why would you not want that money to go to the sport, the stars of the sport, the ones that the reason why the fans are tuning in? Why would you not want to put the sport in a position to have the 40 best drivers, if not just in the United States, but the 40 best drivers in the world on the racetrack, instead of, I mean, we had this discussion before when I was on the show, instead of 13 of the best drivers and then the ones that can afford to be there. I mean, that's one aspect I haven't understood for a long time on the model that NASCAR has built, is we're not getting the ultimate. I mean, we still get them in there, but we're not getting every car full of the ultimate stars of auto racing, period.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that I thought was interesting. So if I'm Rick Hendrick and them, so there's 2 points to what I want to say here with this. If we do get to a courtroom setting and we actually get to trial, I think it's fair to assume or safe that Rick Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Brad Keselowski, all these team owners, Jack Roush, are going to be subpoenaed either by NASCAR or by 2311 and FRM to give their input on why they signed and what their real thoughts were. It's going to come out, and you're going to have to tell the truth in court, or you're going to be charged with perjury, because it's already known from discussions last year. There's text records between the teams. There's a team discussion group. There's the discussions that were had, that were detailed in writing between the teams when the RTA was trying to negotiate. So there's all these legal records already that are going to be public domain. So now you're going to have to put Rick Hendrick on the stand, Jeff Gordon on the stand, and say what you really thought about the deal in open, honest terms. And you're going to have to be very particular and careful how you say it, because they're going to be able to subpoena those records and say, here's what you actually said, and you can't afford to be perjured either. And then in addition to that,
I mean, you might as well just get up on the be like, you guys already have the records. You know what I said.
Yep. But I think it will help FRM in them, is my point.
Yeah.
So I think it's not in NASCAR's interest to go to trial, because if all this comes into public domain, I think it's only going to hurt NASCAR. It'll hurt their relationship with the teams. Like, nothing good comes to this for NASCAR. If we keep going, they should just take the loss and move on, because you're going to end up burning the bridges with the teams, because they're going to have to speak in open court and tell the truth. The teams that did sign, though, are incentivized for NASCAR to win, because NASCAR did say that there's a provision in the agreement that if there were less than 36 charters, that the increase in payout would go up based on whatever that difference was. So if the 36 charters and everybody's base price was 5 million and there's only 30, that's going to go up a percentage, but they didn't say what it was, because of there's a couple things around it, but NASCAR would pocket some of it under the guise of investing into marketing of the sport, which is what they put into the filing. So that's interesting.
Well, I mean, Rick Hendrick said it best. I signed it. I was tired.
Yep.
I was tired, so I signed it. I was tired of the back and forth.
Yep.
I mean, I think if they were just put him on a stand, I mean, I think that's a slam dunk, because Rick Hendrick, the most successful team owner there is, was held at gunpoint, and he said, I just signed it.
Yep.
I'm done. I was tired of negotiating.
Well, and again, the other thing that I think is interesting, we go back, I grabbed snapshots of all the initial filings and documents that were done in the initial filing. You have all the letters back and forth from NASCAR, but now you're going to have all the letters back and forth from all the other teams are going to enter the public record if they have to bring them into court and subpoena them. So
yeah,
now you're going to get every other team owner's aspect, and you're going to get the full RTA negotiating piece as well. So could make for some other really good information for us as fans. Maybe not for NASCAR, but as fans, I'm enjoying it. So, anything else we want to talk about with the lawsuit?
I think it's pretty wrapped up for me.
Okay,
Chris.
I mean, I think that's the only thing NASCAR is going to be able to hold on to and try and use for leverage, is the fact of, well, if we can eliminate some of these charters, it's going to be more money in your pocket. But on the same hand, from a fan standpoint, and even from an owner standpoint, I mean, I understand you want to go out and win as many races and as many championships as possible. But the way that the charters are structured now, and I mean, I know we'll talk about this a little more with the provisional that you guys were talking about. You're basically either you want to try and get 40 of the best drivers in here to fill our field,
mm-hmm.
or do we not care and we're just going to try and make it to where we only have to come up with 25 of them?
Yeah,
because you're making it so damn expensive, and you're writing clauses into effect that are basically just going to eliminate the opportunity for cars to enter the races. I mean, at least that's what I'm getting out of what's being said is I get trying to offer the teams more money, but at the expense of what? I mean, at the expense of how many stars are actually I mean, that's like saying, I mean, that'd be like taking I honestly couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Well, basketball, making it to where you don't have 5 people on the court at a time. We'll pay you more money, but you can only have 3 on the field now, or 3 on the court, instead of 5. I mean, I'm kind of having a hard time wrapping my head around that concept or that aspect of it.
Yeah,
because everything else you're writing in, as far as the way the cars are built, the way that the structures are, or the charters are structured and awarded, you're making it impossible for people that probably deserve a seat, but you're making it even harder for them to have an opportunity to.
And then, yeah. I
mean, if that makes sense.
Well, it does to me. I mean, like I said, you're disincentivizing additional people to come. And the other thing I was thinking about was, and again, isn't it in NASCAR's best interest, isn't it even the other team owner's best interest to have 2311 and FRM there? The more people you beat, the more it showcases how good you are. But also, I know specifically with 2311, even though people don't like to want to give the credit to it, but I mean, Michael Jordan being at the racetrack every week puts eyeballs on the screen. That's more eyes seeing your sponsors when your car is leading laps, just because he's there, just because he's at the race. So it's in your benefit to have Michael Jordan in this sport. The highest paid earning name and likeness guy probably in the history of NIL, other than probably Dale Earnhardt, because Teresa and he were so good. I mean, and probably Dale Jr. Like, I don't know why you would not. It would be in your interest you want 2311 a charter team. You want them at every single event, because Michael, it loves competition. He's coming to all these events. The more he's there, the more eyeballs there are in your sport. That can only be good for you and your sponsors. Plus, it brings in other sponsors to this sport that maybe weren't here before. I mean, when Bubba became part of that team, there were tons of sponsors we had never heard of. Root Insurance. You saw DoorDash get in. You saw,
Columbia.
Saw movements.
I mean,
he stole U.S. Air Force from 43. That's been on 43 forever.
Yep, you got the Air Force. You got Columbia Sporting Goods. You've gotten.
And I don't know if you want to segue this into kind of what we all were talking about before we went live with the provisional that's not going to pay
anything.
I mean, you're not. You can come and race here, but unless you bring sponsorship or the team is going to pay you, doesn't matter where you finish, you're not going to get paid from us. I mean, what incentive is that to bring
to race as an open team? That's the only thing they didn't detail in open court, but I'm sure as we keep going, it will. Is what's the payout difference from an open team to a chartered team? If a chartered team is guaranteed $5 million for the year per team, what's the payout to an open team? Probably $2 million at best, I would think. And that's assuming you make all those races and earn a good enough spot. And yeah.
Well, that's the thing. The open teams don't have a base.
Right. So they don't get they just get whatever.
They would only receive. I think that's the difference. They would only receive whatever they point finish was.
Yep.
So they're missing out on $5 million.
Yep.
If for some reason somehow, like say Ryan Priest, this is obviously far fetched, but if Ryan Priest went on, never mind, he's not. He is chartered this year.
Yeah.
But if he was unchartered like we originally thought he was going to be, if he were to went on to win a championship, he's probably getting the championship money minus five million. Probably minus
I'm not
a little
even sure
bit
he
more
gets that, because I would bet you that there's a difference in chartered versus unchartered payout in purses.
Yeah, there is.
Purse is going to be the race purse, but in terms of, like, let's say you are an open team, 2311's cars and FRM's cars are good enough to qualify based on past year's performance. We don't know how that would downhill slide without the investment from the charter money. But let's just say they performed at the same level. They've proven they can win races and they can qualify for the playoffs. So if they qualified for the playoffs, what charter bonus money is there for qualifying? There's different purses and initiatives for making these different things as a charter versus an open. So, if you were to win the championship as the 2311 car, which Reddick, almost did last year, he was in the final. He had an opportunity. If Reddick were to make the final four and win the championship as an unchartered team, is that payout, instead of, let's say, that race winning championship of 8 million value, does that drop to like half, less to a third? Because you're not under the charter agreement. Like, that's some of the stuff that I'd be interested to see if we get more info in the filings, is how much, not only are you not getting that base, but now what's the purse value difference?
But my point was, where's the incentive for? I mean, we see Helio Castroneves is going to attempt the Daytona 500. Well, where's the incentive for those guys to come over and even attempt it, whether it's from another series here in the United States or seeing more of the Marcus Ambrose, Juan Pablo Montoya, SVG. I mean, you're making it harder and harder.
Verstappen to answer the question of who's the best.
Yeah, you're making it harder and harder for anybody to even attempt to.
Yeah, because I can get provisional for Helio, for example. They've already said in the news he gets a guaranteed spot, but this Trackhouse is basically fielding that car for free, out of their own pocket, because no matter where he finishes, whether he qualifies on the pole and then turns out and wins a race, or he finishes last, there's no difference. He's running the race with zero beneficial gain to them other than whatever they get from a sponsorship side point, because it says, and we can transition to the rule updates now.
Yeah, and that was
the big one, the open exemption.
The transition is you're taking that incentive for us to see not only superstars from within other motorsports in the United States, but you're taking away a lot of the incentive to, like I said, for the SVGs and the Verstappen, any of those guys from out of the country, you're taking that draw away.
Yeah, because I mean, those guys don't race for free. I mean, yeah, they want to come over here and try it and look like, okay, SVG did good, and then he won, and he's competed since then. So maybe somebody else from F1, from Supercar, decides to come over here, but now they're going to race in a car that gets them zero money. So in terms of getting them, if the teams get no financial benefit from it, then it's going to be harder to satisfy the financial needs to acquire a premium driver to put in that car.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, all they're going for is a trophy, apparently, because like in the thing we spoke about it before we came on the air, Dave Moody on SiriusXM Speedway, he said that from what he can see, he cannot tell whether or not, if Helio Castro is on the pole, whether or not they have to use that 41st spot. And that's something that NASCAR needs to make apparent quick.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, then we don't know if the field's 41 or 40. Because if he makes it on time, or if he makes it in on by the duels, then there's only 40 starters.
Well, and the other thing with that, where's it at in the lawsuit? As far as the lawsuit was concerned, NASCAR mentioned in court they're up to 43 charters, which I didn't know that was possible. Where's it at?
I guess if they ever do that, then it's, there would be no open cars, obviously.
Yeah,
it'd be like F1. It'd be like F1.
NASCAR. Yeah, the charter agreement allows for NASCAR to have up to 43 chartered teams.
And I guess my other question with what was just mentioned there is, so that provisional only applies to Helio. I mean, and then if he doesn't,
that's what trying to. Well, everybody's trying to figure out is if they have to use it. If they sit on the pole, obviously they didn't need it.
Yeah, so they said they filed his entry with the OEP because it was, we've had the charter agreement since August, so they knew about this new thing, so they had time to do it. But what it says is similar to a promoter's provisional used in short track racing. The OEP guarantees a starting position for a world-class driver to enter a NASCAR race. And then later in the language, it talks about their racing resume. So obviously, it's subject to what their racing resume is. So, I mean, who determines what a world-class driver is?
Yeah.
We have this discussion about who the best is right now in the world between Larson, Verstappen, Hamilton, all these people. Who's actually the best? Well, what determines a world-class resume? If I go win 20 wheel and modified championships, is that a world-class resume, even though it's a lower series? So I should get a guaranteed starting spot, or is a world-class resume meaning you have to have so many wins, titles, and only a top-tier series, whether that's Formula One, IRL, V8 Supercar, is a perfect example of like a really wild one would be, okay, let's say you've got John Force. Should John Force be allowed to enter the Daytona 500 because he's only ever driven fast in a straight line and has 20 something championships?
He actually did run some IROC at Daytona.
Well, right. He's run the IROC stuff, but other than that handful of stuff, he's never really run.
I'm being Captain serious here, but he's not allowed to race anything anymore with what happened to him last year.
No, I'm just using him as an example though. So like you've got this world-class funny car racer, or one of his daughters, Brittany or Ashley, that are also world-class, winner in drag racing, etc. Should they be allowed because they've got all these trophies? Are they world-class? I would argue
NASCAR would probably allow it just because of the name.
Right. So basically it said their first part, they're gonna have to define what is considered world-class. And they'll probably say, well, we'll know it when we see it. But then the big part to what we were talking about earlier, if the OEP is used, driver car owner will not be eligible for the following: race points, playoff points, prize money, or tiebreaker and finishing position. So basically, it's just somebody racing for the fun of racing.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to be gained for that team in any which way, shape, or form, except for the interesting thing. It says, you don't get race points, playoff points, prize money, or tiebreaker benefit. But if you win a regular race, you do get to go and race in the All-Star race, is what it said. Well, I thought I didn't get any benefit from running this race other than the win and the trophy, but now I get to go to the All-Star race too. If I win the pole, do I get to run in the Clash?
Oh, we don't do that no more.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, if they were to ever but you get my point.
But the answer used to be yes on that. Yes.
Right. So it says and it says in language, so they thought about some of this. If the provisional car wins a race and or stage, the car will be credited with the race win, including the trophy and all-star eligibility, but not finish will not count towards playoff eligibility. So, and then the other part is wherever that person finishes, whether it's first or third, every person behind them would seed up in finishing position one spot. If the OEP entry wins the race, the second place person gets the race points, but not the playoff points.
And the prize money.
Prize money
for winning Daytona 500 for finishing second.
Yep.
That just sounds ridiculous.
Well, not only that, but reread the beginning of that again, because that's confusing as hell. So anybody that wins a race or a stage, well,
with the OEP.
Yep. If anybody that wins, if the OEP car, so if the provisional car wins a race and or a stage, that car, not the driver, the car will be credited with the race win, including the trophy and all-star eligibility, but
so
not
you get all-star now
playoffs. Go ahead.
It's just so you're automatically entered to make the all-star race because you won a stage.
No, win.
I know, but that's just worded weird as hell to me.
It is. Well, I mean, the fact that they put wins the race or a stage, They really need to clean that up because it does say if you win
Yeah,
a race or a stage, you get a credit with the win and the all-star eligibility. It doesn't say if you win a stage. They should have left the stage out of it. I don't know
yeah.
why the
That
word
was kind
stage is in there at all.
of is
The
what is
stage is in there because of the points earned in the stage. That's why.
I
well
would
that
have separated the all-star eligibility for if
yeah,
you win. I would just would
that's
have separated because right now it's not very clean. It almost reads, I think, to Chris's point, if I win a stage, is OEP. So Helio wins the second stage at Daytona 500. You're in the
yeah.
All-Star.
The all race. That's that. Yeah, that meant that was worded completely retarded.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, they have to put in prior 90 days prior to an
90
event,
days.
and then the big one that everybody also is confused on and pointing out criteria for approval will be on case by case basis. Prior racing resume is a significant contributing factor, but it's not the only factor. So, full time, the last sentence of that section, full time NASCAR drivers are not eligible. So, what everybody's trying to understand is so you're saying Helio gets a guaranteed starting spot, but Jimmy Johnson doesn't. Or if Mark Martin decided he wanted to come race these cars, he doesn't. You need to clarify that.
Where does that was or is a full time car driver? Because those guys they're not anymore.
Yep.
Still takes part, but he's not a full time driver.
Well, it just says full time drivers are not eligible. So does that mean current full time drivers? So anybody who is a current driver for 2025 season, let's say, for a perfect example, Martin Truex Jr. He retired. He wants to run the Daytona 500.
Why would he?
So is Helio. Helio gets a guaranteed starting spot. Why doesn't Mark? Why doesn't Truex?
Yeah,
he's no longer a full time driver.
The way I read it is it's got to be a different discipline. IndyCar, F1,
but that's not
rally car. I understand, but that's how I read into it. The
because
people that have never run race NASCAR.
Martin Truex isn't a world class driver yet. He's one of your reigning Cup Series champions, but he's not world class.
That's how I read it.
Say about your racing series if you decide he's not world class.
Yeah,
they need to clarify.
I wonder also if there's only allowed to be one per race.
Could be. It doesn't say that it's limited to one per race.
But if that's the case, and say Truex does put in for one, and Helio puts in for one, Jimmy puts in for one. How does that work?
Yeah, who do you
pick?
You
go by date stamp, like
yeah, first person to put in wins, like you're fighting over vacation time at a company.
Yeah, you got to check postmark on it. Who mailed this fucker in first?
Yeah, God knows the UPS driver would not get that one.
Oh. So my other question on that was going to be, so what if we have Hendrick decide to field another car for the 500 this year and put Allgaier in it?
You can't run any more than 4 cars per team, no matter what.
Yep.
Hendrick couldn't do that.
Well, if any team wanted to, though, and put Allgaier in that car.
If you're a 3-car team, you can do it. If you're 4-car, you can't.
So if Hendrick wanted to do it, he'd have to form an alliance with Trackhouse or somebody to basically Hendrick would field the car under that banner.
Which we've seen. I mean, they could do that with Spire easily because they've already got the alliance there.
Exactly.
So my point being, since he's a full-time driver in NASCAR, not the Cup Series, would he not be eligible for that?
Good point. It's
not. Well, that's the same question as asking about Jimmy Johnson and Truex. Essentially,
yeah,
it's the same in my eyes. The same question. It's.
I mean, kind of, but other than he would still be considered. I guess could be considered a full-time NASCAR driver, not a NASCAR Cup driver, but he's still a full-time driver in the Xfinity Series. So would that disqualify him? Or there's a lot that's just worded horribly.
Yes, and that's how half their contracts, it seems, are worded as horribly.
It leaves way too much to interpretation.
Agreed. All right. So under other rule changes, we've got.
I want to talk about DVP.
Yep, there's DVP, there's waivers, and race manipulation. Pick your poison. What do you want to start with next?
DVP is what I'm on.
All right, you little porno dirty bird. All right, so DVP. So here's what the new rule says. The DVP clock will remain in effect. So if, other than Atlanta, I don't know why they called out Atlanta over like Daytona and Talladega. Atlanta gets 8 minutes. Everywhere else, she gets 7. I would have thought
it's because of the pit road. It starts at
You
the
know what? You're
beginning of
right.
pit road, and pit road is started at turn 3, so they give you more time.
You're right. I forgot that they moved the
You're
pit
welcome.
speed, the pit lane all the way back. Well, thank you. Thank
We
you.
knew we
there,
waited up
Susie.
that for something.
Thank you, Susie.
Yeah.
Susie Obvious.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. The bulldog right there. He's on it. He's fiery. All right. So the DVP clock will remain in effect. The big difference is now when your time expires, you're not automatically race ended. You do have to go to the garage though if you're already on pit road. If you can't make it to pit road, you will be automatically taken to the garage, not to your pit stall. So what we had last year with Watkins Glen and Ryan Blaney, with Josh Berry, what was it, Michigan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically flat spotted all the tires and they just,
That's all that was wrong with that car. It had flat tires.
yep, they said you're out. So now instead they would bring him back to the garage. They'd put 4 tires on it. They wouldn't bring him back to the pit stall. They'd bring him back to the garage, but they'd be able to put 4 tires on it, check the car, and put him back out there at least. So your race isn't over. Overall, I think the changes are good because they looked really stupid last year in a lot of the end of year races with the DVP clock. There were cars that most certainly could have been repaired and gotten back in the race. And then, as it's well known, we had the largest wreck in history in a regular competition race at Talladega with 28 cars being impacted in just 2 weeks prior to that, the week before at Watkins Glen, and then not even removed that far from Michigan. You know, you've disqualified all these cars that could have been drivable, but now there is such chaos. Who gets dragged back, who doesn't, who gets to fix their car, who doesn't. Some of those cars were clearly very destroyed, yet they got to compete because they were in the playoffs. And
ironically, Chase Elliott being one of them.
There was a chase clause in there.
Yeah, there was the Chase Elliott effect.
Elliott,
previously known as the Dale Jr. effect. Now it's the Chase Elliott effect.
Well, Chase Briscoe falls in that too because he got that benefit from it as
Yep,
well.
it just says Chase.
Yeah.
The Chase. So does all NASCAR drivers rename themselves Chase for, just for CYA?
Yes. I wanted to talk about this.
Chase Truex, Chase Hamlin.
I wanted to talk about this one specifically because I mentioned it in a prior episode about how when DVP started, it was sheet metal cars, and it probably was needed. There was parts falling off all the time. It made sense. Well, with these cars, it doesn't make sense. It never made sense with these cars.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very glad that they're doing this. And so now your car, no matter what, is not out.
Yeah.
You can go behind the wall and fix on it in case there's another wreck later, and you make up a couple, 2 or 3 spots, and those points are valuable. And you will never have this issue like they did with Ryan Blaney and Josh Berry with just spinning out and not hitting anything and being out of the race.
Yeah.
DVP was, I mean, I know they're still calling it DVP, but the fact that nobody's out of the race now is a plus for me. I think that it opens up, the chance for reporting on issues like that instead of, the car's done, never hear about it the rest of the race.
Well, something that I thought of last year, and I don't remember if y'all were watching early. It was during a practice last year. I'm trying to remember which race. It was in the playoffs, but to the point of DVP. So on DBC, on Dale Jr. Download, on Sirius, like all these different folks, whether it's drivers, crew chiefs, spotters, team owners, whatever, they said the reason why they all agreed as teams that the DVP needed to be done was to protect them from themselves because, man, Dale Jr. said it, and my wife just happens to work for DOT, so she investigates trucking accidents and 18-wheelers, and one of the things Dale Jr. specifically pointed out was you had 18-wheelers traveling down the road with these cars and these crash carts that were certainly overweight because they're carrying around all these extra pieces to fix these cars on a weekly basis all over the country. So they're violating, legal statutes. They're unsafe because they're carrying around more parts, but they're forced into a position where they have to. And one of the things I noticed last year, they said they got rid of this crash cart thing, but it was DeWalt. It was for Bell's car. I'm trying to remember which race it was where he wrecked it. And you saw him wheel out this thing that had to be like 10 feet long, this cart that they bring with the backup car. And it had parts for everything.
I think it was 18 feet long.
That it was massive.
Huge.
It was this, about 5 foot high, looked like a rolling toolbox, but it was their crash box. And it had a drawer for every component: fenders, spoilers, windshields, roof flaps. Like, I was looking at it, I'm like, that was the first time I think I'd seen pictures of that during practice at any track. Normally when they're working on, you don't get to see this thing. So seeing that the first time, I'm like, well, how did that replacing the crash cart negate what Dale Jr. is talking about with all these? You've got a hauler with that big damn thing in it and all that stuff. So clearly it really didn't negate anything.
It does actually. So what you saw was the cart for each. So a 4-car team can have two. I believe it's two spare cars on the track.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing? So more than likely, you have a car. Let's say there's a car in a a spare car in a 5 hauler, and there's a spare car in a 48. The other 2 haulers probably house that box you're talking about
for each of the backups.
Yeah. Okay. So you have this weight here, this weight here. That's probably spread out through all 4.
Okay.
That was just for your backup car. It wasn't actually. I mean, it is a crash car, but it was specifically for fixing up the spare car to get it ready for
getting it back up.
Getting it back on the track. Okay.
That's why, because it is 2 cars per team, right?
Yeah. If it's a 2-car, you can have 1 backup. Yeah. So it basically
I remember there was a scenario, I think it was at Darlington, where Chase had wrecked in practice, and I think somebody else had wrecked, and they had to make sure, like, do not wreck another one because we don't have another one.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that. That was a couple times last year. I think it also was the same thing at Phoenix for the Xfinity cars, because the Xfinity cars, when Algar and what's his damn name? Brandon Jones got wrecked in the oil along with Eric Almirola.
Same scenario.
1 car was already fully wrapped and they were able to use it. The other one, they had to decal by hand because they didn't have any more spares. And like the next closest one is obviously all the way across the country. So that was interesting for sure. So
but yeah, that's why they're able to have that big cart, is because it's the weight's probably, you got a car in this hauler and the cart in this hauler and so on.
Okay. Anything else with the DVP you wanted to talk on, Blake? I know this was a big one for you. I know for me, I'm glad it simplifies. Like there's silly, stupid stuff that should not put a car out of a race when you drag somebody all the way to Michigan or all the way to freaking California. And
I'm just glad we're not like F1. In F1, if you spin out into the gravel and you can't move, you're done. Your race is over.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how good your shape your car's in, you're out.
I think
the moment your car can't move, you're done. So I'm glad we're not there. And I'm glad we're going back, and essentially going back in time, in the sense of you can go to the garage and fix your car no matter what, and get back on the track.
Yeah, I don't want us to get back to, even though it was cool. Like I remember Mark Martin and Dale Jr. as instances, specifically like in the COT days, riding around with basically the whole front of the car cut off, and it's just the bare chassis, the motor, and they're still running around competitive at Martinsville, and they can because it's not an aerodynamic track, and it also helped them performance wise because the tires are super cool because there's all that air on them. But I'm
also those look really cool though.
They looked really awesome, and we'll never have that again. But I'm glad we're not going back quite to that, because it is unsafe, because now you're losing a lot of the protections that the body panels provide and other stuff. And you honestly can't. And again, I know a lot of people, it's racing. That's part of what you sign up for. However, I don't think it's responsible for NASCAR to say, we're doing this in the vein of safety. That's why we have this, this, and this. But then to let them go back out there with open doors, without window net stuff being, without you knowing the structural integrity of the car is truly sound, and putting them knowingly putting them in danger is not the same thing as unknowingly. Like at this point, the car's been compromised. It's been in a really bad wreck, and we all know when you see it what really shouldn't be on the racetrack. That's not going to be able to be up to speed. So I think this is like a happy middle ground. I'm sure there's
my
going to be
big thing
situations.
was you have more tools in the garage than you do on pit road. That's obvious,
Yep.
right? Well, before this rule, uh, I remember there was a wreck that Larson was involved in, and he barely made it out on time. Then when you go green, you have 3 laps to make race speed or your average lap time or whatnot.
Yep.
And he made it. And then the moment you do that, you can go behind the wall and go in the garage and do all
Yeah.
your other necessary repairs. That was always silly to me that you had to make time to be able to go to the garage.
And
So
that's something
now
they
that's
didn't talk
gone.
about, by the way, in the new agreement. There's no mention of minimum race speed in the DVP, like to clear the DVP. So I'm assuming the same
That's because
principles
you
will
don't
still
have to
apply.
clear DVP because you can go to the garage. You still have to make minimum speed. You're gonna have to make minimum speed. If you don't, they'll black flag you. You'll have to go back in the garage
Okay.
and do some more work.
Okay. All right.
I,
So anything else you want to talk about with that?
I
Either?
think the one thing which I don't know if they clarified in there at all. I haven't necessarily read through it myself, but
There wasn't anything else to it that I didn't read, I don't think.
so they make it sound like even if you have flat tires, no matter what it is, if you can't make it back to pit road yourself, you're getting hauled to the garage. Well,
Yes.
we've already proved that just from a spin, you flat spot all the tires and you can't drive the car. You can almost destroy somebody's race though by hauling
I
them
mean,
to the garage instead of just taking.
you're gonna be multiple laps down regardless.
Yep. Well,
Well,
the
That's
other
the whole
thing,
point. And the thing is you're gonna be multiple laps down regardless. So if they say in their wording, if you can't move, you're going straight to the garage. That pretty much makes it a level playing field. If you can't move, you're going to the garage. Period. And that's just there's no other wording needed. Boom, you can't make it there. That's where we're taking you. That's why there's no judgment calls to be made.
yep, I agree. I understand what Chris is saying, but I like that. That's the point.
well, if
No,
I was a team owner, then especially not only from a team owner aspect, but if I was a fucking crew chief, I would be livid right now, saying you need to get us off these fucking bump stops, in so when we get a flat tire, that car can fucking move.
well, the reason
West,
why they're on those things is because they've got so much money invested in that damn underpan.
Well, I understand that, but to not be able to get your car back and look at potentially only losing 1 lap and just
Yep.
because you're going to look at losing 5 laps just over flat tires.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion on that one aspect. I mean, I get crash damage, but even if it's a single car spin now, you're looking at just getting in a bad aero spot, not even on something that you're making, and you now are just going to get hauled to the garage and you
Yep.
have no shot at the race anymore, period.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely negatives to it. I agree with you on that. I just think I'm in agreement with Blake. At least now it's a level playing field. It's not a judgment call anymore.
Yeah.
If this happens, it doesn't matter if your name is Chase Briscoe, Chase Elliott, Chase Larson, Chase whatever. You all go to the garage together. Which is it's not perfect, but it's better than
your race is like I said, your race is over regardless whether they take you to garage or you take you to pit road. Your race is over regardless. You're not going to win. You're not going to finish on 1 lap down or two. You're going to be 3 laps down regardless of that because it takes them so long. Because if they're all 4 flat, you they're going to do all these measures to make sure they don't tear your car up. You're going to be multiple laps down, regardless of whether they take you to pit road or not.
But that's also my biggest argument, which I kind of missed out on some of the talks that you guys had in previous episodes. That is the biggest thing I hate about this damn car. I understand the function of the underbody, but that is the stupidest thing you could have ever done on a friggin' race car, because you can't drive it back when you got flat tires, and it takes forever for them to tow it back, and they still screw it up towing it back because there's no way for it not to drag on the damn ground.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The thing they have to fix, and it would be it would be millions of dollars in development and testing to fix, would be they need to go back to the smaller brake package, because of you need a bigger wheel, or not a bigger wheel, you need a bigger tire which goes onto a smaller wheel, and in order to go to a smaller wheel you have to shrink the oversized brakes in the front and the back that they've got on there now, which means you have to resize all that geometry in the front. You got to resize all that'll fit inside of a smaller wheel, which would create passing, because when you can't stop on a dime like you can with these cars, and you shrink the brakes back down to a reasonable size instead of sports car size, well, then you can't go into the corner. Like the drivers have all said in this car, I can go into the corner further than I've ever been able to go in before. Basically, till I see God, I can go.
Yeah.
And that is what also again stops it's what's honestly ruined it's made for better racing at the big tracks, because they can drive in harder in the big corners at higher speeds for passing. What it's also done conversely is destroyed short track and road racing.
Yep.
Because those slower speed corners, because I can drive in there so deep and the brakes are so good, I don't wheel hop anymore. And when I come in there and I hit you, because I've got such good brakes, you're not really going to spin me out all that easily.
Not to mention the downshifting at every single short track.
So when you pair that with, like you said, with the sequential shifter downshifting and everything, it's near impossible, as Denny said, as others have said, to bump somebody out of the way.
Well, and that's where
you bump them, they go up the track, they downshift, and just keep going.
The softer tire that we got last year, that is definitely, as a result of Richmond, that then played out really well at Martinsville. That's a step in the right direction, but I think ultimately to fix short track and road racing within this series, if we're going to keep having them, 5 to 6 of them a year, you're going to have to redesign. I know the teams don't want to have to run like an A package and a B package, but you've brought this up before, Blake. We used to have different downforce packages, and I know it's a cost measure thing not to have that, but you do need to have a short track, road track car, and then you have a speedway, super speedway car.
Yeah, me and you even talked about a little earlier.
Yeah, so that's just the way it's going to have to be, or you're going to have to get dramatically softer with these tires.
I think not only getting dramatically softer, but not only getting the performance back with the smaller brake systems, but allowing for a larger tire to be put on by creating a smaller wheel, not diameter wise, but just sidewall size.
Yep.
It's also going to open it back up to what my point was. At least if you can put a damn interliner back in there, they can get back to pit road.
Yes, exactly. Yep, because the smaller wheel allows for the interliner. The interliner is what allows you to not be stuck on the ground.
Yeah.
So,
because they've made it apparent as of now that they're not going to do anything as far as ride heights.
Nope.
So I guess that's the basis of my whole argument on why I brought that up, is just it's just poor design, and I think if I don't know. I think we could feasibly build one car that's going to perform on all the racetracks, but not on this platform. It's just not going to happen.
No, when they make a next gen 2, I think their biggest area they need to focus on is the suspension area, where the tires, the brakes, all that area is. I think if they fix that, you could use it in one platform for everywhere. The rest of it's really not that bad, but that area, even though I'll admit it looks badass, it looks great on a diecast. With those wheels, they look really aggressive on track, but for racing purposes, we're not running treaded tires. We're not running the kind of tires you run when you run IMSA or sports car. We're not and we don't have all the same stuff. So,
and tell me if this doesn't make sense. If we go back to a wheel and tire that's going to give us a smaller brake package, I don't think the horsepower talk will be an issue anymore.
no, because those tires got greasier. They had more shift and slip.
Yep.
I mean, I still think we need more horsepower, but I think you could table that debate for a while.
Only if you get rid of the damn shifting.
Yep, for sure.
Well, the shifting is there because of the lack of horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I get that, but I mean, you could still, I mean, just adding gears in. What did you think adding gears in was going to do? That's going to give them more options to do exactly what we're seeing.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know.
All right. So our next fun one, also basically the Chase Elliott rule, even though others have used it, the waiver. So waivers for the playoffs. We've had this issue basically since Kyle Busch won his championship after breaking both his legs in the Xfinity race. Many argue it's an illegitimate championship. I can see it both ways. I think that a guy who can win 5 races in your championship without having run the full season, well, you know what? He came back and he did what was necessary to win. So I don't really have a problem with it. But I can see the people who argue, he wasn't present for didn't attempt to run all the races. Granted, he literally couldn't walk as a result of that. And it was in a NASCAR race. So I think
what did he miss 10 races that year? He missed 10 races, right?
11.
Yeah. 11. He missed 11 races. He won races, and he made inside the top 30 per that rule at the time.
Yep, he followed the rules.
He followed every rule there was. He broke his legs in a race car. I mean, how do you delegitimize somebody that they didn't break any rule?
No. Well, it's Kyle Busch. The people hate that. So, but he was the first. I think he was the first waiver.
The same way you say Joey Logano shouldn't have won that championship.
Yeah. So then we get it wasn't last year. It was the year before. Chase Elliott breaks his leg snowboarding. He gets a waiver. Now he breaks his leg, and he does it not in a race car on a race weekend. And you get Alex Bowman, who breaks his back in a sprint car. You get Larson, who misses the 600 because of weather. Things are outside of control because he's out running the 500, bringing a massive amount of coverage to NASCAR, to IndyCar. It was like the biggest story in motorsports for months. The preliminary stuff started. The fast, speed pole qualifying, fast lap, fast Friday. All those things leading to the All-Star. Like there was all this anticipation around both events. So what NASCAR has done, they said that playoff waivers will only be issued if a driver misses a race for medical, birth of a child, basically anything that they deem substantial. But what it won't be is that if you miss it, I wish I had this one pulled up. I thought I did.
If you miss for any reason outside of medical.
Yeah. For any reason outside of medical. Yeah. Okay. So here's exceptions include birth of a child, family emergency, age restrictions. I don't know why an age restriction has to do with a waiver.
They're talking about the truck series.
Okay. So
if you turn 18, say in March, okay. The first couple races, you get a waiver for it. It doesn't matter because you weren't 18 yet.
Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so unless you miss, other than that one, unless you miss a race due to a child or a family emergency or a medical emergency, you will no longer be given a playoff waiver. And more importantly,
you can get a waiver, but
you can get a waiver. So if Larson did this year what he did last year, he'd still get a waiver. But now, if it's not for one of those reasons we previously listed, he loses all his playoff points that he's accrued to that point, and he cannot accumulate any future playoff points. So it says they will start the 10 race postseason with 0 bonus points if they had qualified. So I think this really, so there's a couple things. One, you're trying to get other drivers from other disciplines to come into your sport with this OEP, and we'll give you an automatic starting spot. But if you, a NASCAR driver, want to go and cross collaborate and bring eyes from other disciplines, and as a result, you miss one of our races, we're going to penalize you. So we're rewarding one, penalizing our own. That's 1 point. Then also, the penalty itself is massive. So if you miss one of our races, we're going to take away all your playoff points. That's huge. So if they did that to Larson last year, he had 6 wins. At the time, he had 3 wins plus.
When he missed Charlotte, he had 2 wins.
All right, so he lost those 2 wins, but overall, he would have lost 6 wins worth of points. So there's 30 points.
30 points.
Plus all his stage points. Well, he definitely wouldn't have made it to the round of 8 last year based off that without those points.
So yes, he would. Yes, he would. Yes, he would have.
Would he?
He won Bristol and he won the Roval.
But they don't specify whether or not you. Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay, yeah, you know what? You're right. He would have advanced.
Yeah. Just based off winning those 2 races, he advances. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
You know what? Let's not look at Larson then as the example. Let's look at
the example you can use is if what I think they should have done, and I understand the prior stuff. You eliminate the prior wins. I agree with that. But the stuff after is what I'm not good with.
Yeah,
if you miss the Coca-Cola 600,
I agree.
And then you win 4 races like Kyle Busch did when he came back from being hurt or whatever, he won. You should not be screwed just because you missed a race prior to that.
Well,
I get taking everything out before that. I get taking away the points you get for the where Larson finished second in the driver points leading into the playoffs. I get that, but I do not get taking away the other 2 wins that he got before the Brickyard and the Sonoma race. I don't agree taking those playoff win bonus points and stuff away, and all the other points that he accumulated for stage wins and so on and so forth. I don't agree with that at all.
No, I agree. I think punishing them after the fact, I can see stripping them of anything they've earned to that point. I don't think you should continue the punishment. That's basically to me saying it's double jeopardy in the legal world. All right, I caught you committing a crime. I sentenced you. You completed the punishment, but when you get out, I'm still going to treat you like you're the criminal, and I'm going to keep punishing you. That's it's illegal in the criminal world. There's no double jeopardy is illegal, but this is the essentially double jeopardy. I punished you for going, and I took all your points, and then I'm gonna punish you again because I'm not gonna let you earn any more. So that's
I mean, I get it's good that they keep their playoff eligibility at least.
Yep. But I mean, at that point,
why do you even try to do anything the rest of the year?
Right. So this enforces the commitment from NASCAR's perspective to participate in all the races. Okay, objective accomplished. But I just think about all the HMS 1100 merchandise, all the eyes that were on the 500, all the eyes that were on the Coke 600 that night when Larson was flying in. Literally, they were, the TV cameras cut from the track to prior to the rain delay. Him on the golf cart, his helicopter. Like they had a Larson tracker. Like, where is he geographically in the world right now? Like there was all this on all these TV networks and all of social media and all the news outlets that were covering it. And like all that publicity, you're basically saying you don't want that. And you're going to penalize anybody who does that in such a dramatic fashion that other than Larson being committed to it this year, I don't know that I see somebody else attempting the double again, because if you can't control Mother Nature. So if I've got all this money invested in doing both, why would I even dip my toe in the water now, knowing that the loss isn't just, okay, I might lose my playoff points. I didn't lose my eligibility, but I lost all my points. Okay, well, I can try and make those up. There's still, half the season to go. And I'm still where I am in the points. Well, you know what? It says you don't get any more future playoff points either, which means you don't get the seeding points either.
No.
So the regular season championship points. I didn't think about
no
that.
matter what, you're 2,000. You're
no matter what, you start last.
That's
Every
why.
round,
That's why I
last.
said. That's why I said. It in that case. Why would you even try the rest of the year? The rest of the year is R&D. The rest of the year, you are trying shit just to try it because it does not matter what you do.
I mean, honestly, and I kind of me and Blake talked about this a little bit yesterday. My big thing, and even listening to you guys talk about it even more, why even apply for the damn waiver then?
Yep.
Well, if you don't apply for the waiver, you don't get to go to the playoffs.
I don't get to go to the playoffs where I'm going to finish last anyways. What's the fucking point?
Well,
not necessarily.
Hold on. Before you say he's going to finish last, let's assume Larson didn't have any playoff points.
But
Roy Logano went in there basically last, and he won the championship.
Yep.
True.
He didn't advance anywhere off of playoff points. He advanced because he won in each round, and he finished in points each time. In the round he didn't qualify for, where HMS was illegal on the 48 underweight, he made enough points in that round to advance. So, and it ultimately ended up. So it's possible,
but it's possible, but it's also going to be affected because they're also not saying so. Before and after, are they even counting? Are they counting once the playoffs start too? You don't.
Any future playoff points do not matter.
Yep, you cannot accumulate any.
That's essentially career suicide.
That's insane. Well, I mean, I guess I could see why you still want the eligibility because making that chase, I know pays a lot more.
Yeah, from the financial standpoint, you still finish no worse than 16th. So if Michael McDowell say did this, he has a road racing background. If he went and let's say he wanted to go run, 12 hours of what is it?
Sebring.
Of Sebring or whatever, and he missed a race, or he ran Monaco. Let's say he was able to get an F1 license and he ran Monaco, and obviously he's not going to make it back in time. He would still, if he had won, like the year he won the Daytona 500, he would still finish no less than 16th in the year for points for FRM.
Yeah,
it's a wild example, but
I'm pretty sure definitely
that it's something that could happen. So, I mean, I'm glad they're not stripping their playoff eligibility. I don't agree with the post-event punishment. Like, I'm okay with you exercising punishment of basically saying, everything you accumulated to this year. I'm even okay with taking away championship eligibility to that point in that year. To say, okay, well, you didn't start the race, so you lost your playoff eligibility. You have to requalify. If you win a race in the future, you requalify. I'd be okay with that. Taking away all success achievements after the fact, though, seems too much to me.
Imagine missing Daytona for some reason.
Yeah.
And then you go on a spree throughout the summer, and you win 6 or 7 races, and it does not matter. One hill of beans.
Well, let's say you go run the Baja 1000, and you don't make it back. Let's do a wild scenario. You run the Baja 1000. Latin gang kidnaps you, and we finally get you free. You get your waiver, and you start the 3rd race of the season. You win 8 races, but we don't fucking care. You get no points because you missed it because you outrun the Baja 1000. You got kidnapped by the gang. That's your problem.
Yeah,
it's insane, but
the fact that you can miss one of the first 5 races of the year.
Yep.
And the rest of the year, like. Yeah. My question is, does it say in there if you haven't won, if you win, are you in the playoffs?
Yeah. If you qualify for the playoffs with a win, you retain your playoff eligibility. You just get no.
I'm talking about after the fact, after you're missed. Okay.
Yeah.
So
they're just saying
that goes with what I'm saying. If you miss one of the first, like Charlotte's what the 12th race of the year or something like that.
Yeah, right around there.
May, so that's what they were talking about, Larson. That's halfway through the regular season. If you miss one of the first 5 races for some reason outside of their little, 5-reason deal, and you go on a spree, it's just It's stupid. I don't agree with this rule at all with
No.
the aftermath of after it happens.
Yeah.
I will say if I got kidnapped in
Here we go.
Mexico.
if I got kidnapped running Baja, I would as soon as I got rescued, before they got me out of the van, I'd be on the phone with Kathy Bates from Misery. I need some kind of injury to try and get myself back in this. Damn it!
Oh,
You know what? You're right.
from
My scenario would
hospital.
be wrong because you were tortured under duress for your NASCAR millions, and so
Yeah,
you're going to get a medical exemption. So my thing's out the window.
yeah. Because even though I'm back, I still can't get in a race car because I'm injured. So hey,
Because they drilled a hole in my leg, like in
loophole
hospital,
here.
and they're like cutting me up.
I'm finding the loophole. Damn it!
Poor Kathy Bates.
Poor driver of the Baja 1000 got both legs broken. He got taken by
They,
Liam Neeson, who has a very set of skills.
I hope they revisit this rule in the
I think they
future.
will. I think they will
Because
because I think they'll
that
see the
is
negative outweighs the positive. Like I'm for enforcing and making your series that you signed up to compete in full season the priority. I'm all for that. I think this is just a step too far.
yeah.
I think they went
I mean,
from not having any reinforced. I'm really interested to see what Jordan Bianchi and Jeff Gluck talk about when they do their first one of the year and talk about this, because there's a lot of information. Jeff was team waiver. Jordan was very anti-waiver, didn't care what your reasoning was. You don't deserve a waiver. So, like JGR, for example, is now letting Bell compete in dirt races again. Him and Larson put on a hell of a show the other day. But if Larson or Bell flips their car and gets hurt, do they deserve a waiver to start the season? They were out racing. That's not a medical. It's not childbirth. It's whatever. According to this rule, they would get a waiver.
that is
compete,
medical.
but they would not.
That's
compete.
medical.
I think you would find that they would.
You're going to have a lot of people fighting that, though.
Yeah, I think you would find them.
Did you not go to the hospital and seek medical attention? And did you not? Is it not all over the screens of everybody on YouTube? That's a medical waiver.
But why are you in there? Oh, because you were
Doesn't
running
matter.
a race.
Well,
you didn't technically miss a race. It was in the
it says in the description. Medical.
I'm finding the loophole. If I'm Larson, I'm going to go win that damn Indy 500 and then drive the fucker off that elevator when they lift me up to do the.
Hey, Alan.
My bad.
Alan, you're gonna have to learn how to bleep things out when Chris is on, because that's like number 8. That's number 8, I believe.
Nah. No, this is what makes it good. All right, so now we're on to the final
oh my God.
rule here, and
I think
one. Yeah, go ahead.
I really only monitor like the first 5 to 10 minutes of it, and then it gets lax after that.
All right, we don't know nothing about racing. Let's next one.
Yeah, they don't want to listen to this.
Yep. The last major one they announced was race manipulation, crackdown, and suspensions. So it was well known last year that Team Chevy basically orchestrated Byron getting into the playoffs, and
They didn't do nothing wrong. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Yeah, whatever. We both hate Byron. but either way, what they did, what Toyota did with Bubba falling back was harder to prove with Bubba. And we've seen this as early back as when in Richmond when Gordon got put in and because of the spin gate. So what they've now done, and this to me, this is good, that we talked about it last year, you and I, Blake, after when I just did my own little rant about I felt like they needed to drop the hammer. I don't think they've done enough strength, to make it strong enough, but obviously they don't want to run a manufacturer off, so I can understand that. But it says violations by an OEM that will result in the loss of manufacturer's points, loss of wind tunnel hours, RCFD runs. Don't really know what that is. Something probably to do with development. And or member ejection suspension that include but are not limited to vehicle testing policy, vehicle wind tunnel testing or wind tunnel policy, team event roster, and code of conduct. So if they violate any of these things as part of that for race manipulation, then that's going to be the big one. before they weren't penalizing manufacturers. So things like Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta, where, last year Larson was told don't push 6. Basically, Chevy formed a wall behind Byron at Martinsville and didn't allow Brad, Ryan Preece, anybody to get up there to him. Where just that alone would have cost him the points necessary not to qualify. Forget what Bell did with the wall ride, not wall ride.
And
I still cannot believe that they took a half hour to figure out whether Bell rode the wall or not, and did not know anything about the race manipulation.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but you are the sanctioning body, and you're telling me NBC is looking at something that you have no clue about?
Right. And in the booth of the officiating, you have all the same feeds the TV has. Plus, you have the unedited. So, and not last year, how many years ago was it where they penalized the 41 team?
That was 2022.
Yeah, when they penalized the 41 team going at the Roval.
Knocked Larson out of the playoffs because of letting Briscoe in.
Yep. So we've had multiple issues with race manipulation, and the manufacturers orchestrating it. Whether it was the issue with Toyota at Martinsville, or not at Richmond, and making sure that, through MWR that they get there. I think this is good. I'm really curious how they enforce it once they, you're going to take away these things from them. Is that enough of a deterrent? Is it strong enough to get a manufacturer's attention and stop it? I mean, we're going to find out. Our first 2 races of the year are drafting races. Give me 1 second. I got to let this dog out, but y'all can talk. What do you think?
Well, I kind of have an argument for what he said in an earlier episode, so I'll wait till he gets back.
What's the argument?
I think he kind of agreed with them with the penalty that they gave to Bell, but I think what I don't ultimately agree with them taking or disqualifying him to that extent for what they considered to be a wall ride, because I think what the Chevy did was a hell of a lot more egregious than what Bell did, especially with the communications.
Yeah, I agree.
I know the 24 wasn't aware of it,
but they still benefited from it.
I still felt like they should have penalized both of them.
That's where I landed. I felt like 2 wrongs don't make a right, and you were awarded one of the wrongdoers with an outcome anyway. I would have disqualified them both, and I would have put in whoever was next. I'm trying to remember who it was at the time, but I would have put in whoever was next.
It would have been Larson.
Yeah, would have brought in Larson.
Yeah, I would have brought Larson.
I think that's why I don't know if they really didn't see it or if they lied about it or whatever, but
I just think where I had the giant issue with it is the one that ultimately got his dick knocked in the dirt for it was Bell, and Bell would have never done what he did had the manipulation not happened.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. If they weren't blocking, Byron continues to fall back. Bell doesn't have to go into the corner so hard that he walls it. He didn't go in there to do, Chastain deliberately threw that sucker in gear and never let off the gas. That's not the same thing as what Bell did over driving the corner, getting up in the marbles, hitting the wall halfway through, and then just staying on the gas. Yes, he rode the wall. He didn't go into the corner with that intention. Now, does intent matter? According to, obviously, by NASCAR, intent doesn't matter based on their last decision. Whether you go in there with that intention or it happens as a result of your bad driving, we'll call it, or over driving, they don't care. The result is the result. But
because at that point he was in fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
I got past Bubba, and now I've got to guarantee he's not going to get back by me.
Yep.
And he obviously had no clue that Bubba had a issue, supposedly.
Well, I mean, they never penalized Bubba, so they must have determined
it was
legit.
They penalized they didn't penalize drivers. They penalized their spotters. Freddie Kraft did not go to Phoenix. Neither did Austin Dillon's spotter or
Kosovar. Or
Chastain.
Chastain, yeah.
So let's see. Loses manufacturer points, win total time.
But I think my other big issue with what we were talking about with race manipulation is, I understand it's a sanctioning body that's setting this rule, but at what point, especially during something like the damn lawsuit that's going right now, when it comes to, and this is something me and Blake talked about a little bit this week, for me, stages and green white checkers.
Yep.
It's race manipulation from the sanctioning body side.
Yeah.
From the TV side.
Yeah.
Oh, it absolutely is. Let's see here. I'm just saving this article. I want to make sure I've got it. NASCAR lawsuit.
Because I brought up to Blake that I think when it comes to race manipulation, I mean, we can all see what's going on, and we all have the opportunity to watch it on TV, watch in car, listen to team communications during the race. We all have the opportunity to stream that in some capacity anymore. So whether it's the sanctioning body or us as a fan, we have the ability to see the type of manipulation the teams might be doing. But for how blatantly we're getting stages and green white checkers, especially last year, where they even admittedly, these are the most green white checkers we've had in history. That's race manipulation. I don't care how you look at it, it's friggin' race manipulation.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
And I just have a problem with the sanctioning body coming down this hard on teams and drivers for something that they themselves are doing at some capacity as well.
Yep. The one thing they haven't addressed, the championship format's not going anywhere. I'd really hoped we would get some type of update or change to stage racing in general. It's been brought up by multiple podcasts, multiple members within racing. I know we've talked about it a lot, Blake. I'm sure you and Chris have that. I'm okay with stage racing and awarding points throughout the race because it incentivizes. And I had this conversation with Dave Mooney on Sirius last year that I would like to see, because the question was whether or not drivers were being rewarded enough for their performance. And I thought that, just like how the U awards points for stages, I thought that we should be awarding a point. We talked about it with what we would do with our changes. I would award points for most laps led, leading a lap, and getting the pole, because those used to be things that you were rewarded for, whether it got you entry to the Clash or 5 bonus points for leading the most laps, a point for leading a lap. All those things add up over the year. So you're incentivized to constantly pass each other. So I would like to see them get rid of the stage cautions, because the TV's partners were the ones that came up with this. We'll have stage breaks. It'll help create more excitement, but it'll also be the area where we cram in all our commercials. Obviously, the TV partners are full of shit. They have not followed through, kept all their stuff. We'll be 5 laps into Daytona 500 and go to the commercial. Or we're getting ready to see this fantastic battle. It's 10 laps to go at a 1.5 mile track, and they're competing for the win, and they're trading spots back and forth, and we go to commercial. I thought the whole point of stage breaks was to minimize the commercials and give us more green flag action, on track action. And it hasn't resulted in more of that. To me as a viewer, I don't know about y'all, but to me it hasn't. So let's just get rid of the mandated caution breaks and cautions, and you will get back to having natural cautions, because you won't know when your tire breaks are going to come. We'll still award the points, but now, all right, you genuinely have to run till when you feel comfortable wearing out these tires, and they're smaller, when you feel like you can hold the gas in the car long enough. So
my biggest point there is, especially at a couple of these road courses, but how many races? And I'm almost interested to go back and watch just to rewatch every race from last year and watch how many of these damn races the stage caution would come out and we watch the cars run around under caution for 4 laps, and they would go to commercial and come back from commercial as they're entering pit road.
Yep.
It's like, this is when we're supposed to be at commercial.
Yep.
Just when they're running around under caution with not a damn thing going on. You can give us, go to commercial, bring us back, let us watch the entire friggin' pit cycle happen. And then once they go back and we're resetting the field, then talk about who had stage points. Let's talk about how this affected everything after the fact. Get the friggin' commercials out of the way. Go do the recap, go green, and let us watch till the next friggin' caution comes out.
Agreed wholeheartedly.
But we would look at more damn caution laps last year, it seemed like, than green flag laps almost.
Well, we set a record for most races with green white checkers. But the issue with the stages that I want to see addressed is because how it impacts race strategy. You know, you're going to have long green flag races sometimes. I don't think it's going to become the norm because because the tires are so damn small. If the tires are so small and we keep going towards softer tires on top of it, I just think the cautions will happen naturally enough. You're not going to have to worry about needing the mandated cautions anymore because we're heading the right direction in the tires. But more importantly, you know, look at last year. We only had 1 or 2 races that really, you know, Bristol being one of them with the tires, where stage breaks weren't necessary at all. Even though the tire degradation wasn't planned, it produced, you know, you didn't need mandated cautions to create drama to keep everybody on it. You were trying to see like who could manage their equipment the best and get there. And the same thing happened with Joey winning, you know, his first race to get into the next round. And once the playoffs started with that fuel mileage, you know, he was able to milk it. Was Christopher Bell going to be able to get there? If that had been with stage break stuff coming in and it automatically, and Bell knew when the caution was, he doesn't have to drive as hard. He doesn't have to get there and get through traffic as fast. You know, we're not focusing on, all right, which moves is he going to make? Which cars are going to hold him up? You know, when is his tires going to level off to Joey's? The discipline necessary by Joey to, you know, coast the corner like Brad did at Kansas and Kentucky, winning, and Hamlin, I think, at Pocono. Like, that's still a discipline, and it's still a crucial part of racing. I feel like we've lost that primarily, and the only people that truly know how to do it now are the older drivers that did it in a time when you still had prior to stage breaks. But we need it back.
But we see it on a limited basis because of placement of the cautions. You guys, I think, touched base on this last week or the last show, where especially the one that Blake brought up, where why on God's green earth would I understand it's the longest race of the season?
Yep.
But you break her down into 4 fucking stages? Why?
Yep, with the Coke 600. Why do we not, you know, why do we have a special stage setup for one race when we're supposed to have continuity across all the others? So
but that's the perfect example of what should be either tire management or fuel mileage.
Absolutely.
That is the race that I mean, because you look at when Austin Dillon won it, you look at when
Harvick, when Junior ran out of gas coming to the damn caution or to the flag, you know.
And Austin Dillon, Paul Menard, a lot of these guys that went through and were able to pull a strategy that put them in a position to win the race.
Well, Eric Jones, when he won the Southern 500, and not in the playoffs, but they were able to do a strategy different. You know, those things don't happen very often now because of the stage breaks.
Well, the biggest one was one, if you bring up a Southern 500, was friggin' Regan Smith not coming down for tires.
Oh yeah. And the other thing is, you know, now all these teams have war rooms. You know, they have back at Race Central. Okay, so you've limited the number of people I can have at the track. You know, I've got a rosters in a jersey and this, that, and the other. I can only have this many active crew members and this many active sales and all this team management stuff to try and save the team owners from cost. Okay, so I'm not sending them across the country anymore. But they are. What's that?
Working.
Yeah, they're still working. They're back at RCR headquarters. They're at, you know, at Roush, wherever. And they're sitting in a room full of super nerds, analytical engineers that are looking at it because of the stage breaks, and they can pinpoint this data because of stage breaks. If you took the stage breaks out, it would really mess up their job. because now you don't know when that caution's coming. So you can't predict the right strategy anymore.
Nope.
You wouldn't be able to have them say, okay, well, we know it's going to be in 50 laps. The first stage is going to end, and the fuel run is this, and the tires are this. And that's also part of the problem with stage breaks is that the tires last so damn long and the fuel runs long enough for the first stages that there's no strategy usually in the first or second stage other than flipping them to get points. All the strategy always comes in the third stint of the race. You could pretty much pick how you're going to run every race of the year just based off they've already released the schedules and the stage breaks for the year. So I could basically, if I'm in that race management group, take that data, plug it into my system, and I could already pick my race strategy for the year up to probably 80% certainty and then just tune on it based off past performance and where this stuff runs and where things typically happen. That's not good, not to me, because now you're taking out a lot of the variability that's going to make what you watch on Sunday good or bad.
When you were talking about Spring Bristol last year,
yeah,
the stage breaks saved every single team out there.
Oh yeah,
every single one of them, because of ironically, the stages were happening right at the time of the next tire degradation.
Yeah, where they would just blow. Yep.
Because they had a caution on lap 2 for a wreck,
mm-hmm.
and then they had a caution on lap like 45 or 50 for a tire issue.
Yep.
And then the next caution was stage break. So then they did the same thing again. The next stage, which was 10 laps shorter because, we ran under caution for a stage break for 10 or 15 laps because we can't not count laps on a stage. So,
and then also don't forget that they did say, and Denny said it the entire time after Bristol leading up into Bristol Fall, that if you brought back the same tire, that we wouldn't have the same issue twice because the teams would figure it out. They'd be less aggressive on their setups. And they were. A lot of them were, which is why Larson had such a clear advantage. A lot of people said was because they didn't loosen up. Larson's group and the Hamlin's group didn't go as or dial back as much as some of the others, which is what gave them a distinct advantage. They were all able to stretch the tires further, but some people dialed their setups back so much to account for tire wear, and the tire didn't quite do the same thing, even though it was the same according to them, that you didn't have to baby them as much. But then once you've dialed it back in race, you can't make so many changes. So there's only so much you can do to put your setup back in that was more aggressive. But to the point, I think that, yes, Bristol was too far. What we saw, but had we not had the stage breaks, I think they still would have figured it out, but they were going to run out of tires. Stage breaks saved them. And that, I don't know why we have tire limits at all, honestly. Just, you can buy as many.
Saving money. That's all they ever say. Saving money, but we go to 6 plate tracks a year.
Well, my biggest thing is I'm sick and tired of hearing the excuse, and I get that this may have happened, but I'm sick and tired of every time the argument gets brought up. You said, well, you know what? When it comes to the cost cutting, the teams are the ones that wanted NASCAR to step in. But then you've heard Junior, Hendrick Motorsports, Penske, all of them. Even Hamlin. Well, they say that, but when you put something into place to cut cost, we just go spend that money elsewhere.
Yeah.
You're never saving the money. So quit. The focus on the fact that all this keeps happening so that we can try and find a way to cut cost. It's never going to happen. The teams in NASCAR can say that that's what we're doing this for all they want to. But on the same hand, they've all self-admittedly said, we don't do it, though, because we just take that money and spend it somewhere else.
Well, they're no different than any other human being, honestly. Perfect example. I got a new roof on my house. My home insurance premium goes down. So my mortgage goes down by however many hundreds of dollars. Did I take that money and reapply it towards the principal? Or did I say, hey, I got this much more money to spend each month? That's usually what happens with any normal person. I've now got all this extra money. I'm going to spend it elsewhere.
Yep.
You're muted, Blake, by the way. Okay.
But
must be. What do you ripping ass
no.
bourbon?
Wake up.
I knew I had to cough.
But I mean that's my point. So the whole to agree with you, Chris, the whole argument of we're doing this to save ourselves cost is a BS argument. They're not saving cost.
I'm tired of hearing.
They might be saving money on engine bills, but they're spending it elsewhere. Whether it's they built up these massive war rooms, they've put it into other social engagements for their sponsors. Either way, the money is being spent somewhere. They built airspeed, this fantastic brand new building. They're upgrading. They're getting new,
Yeah, that's Jordan money, though. I mean,
I know, but RFK, they just rebuilt their whole shop floor, cut up into the concrete, repaved it, and put in.
Which Jordan?
I didn't understand all that, by the way. Like, what do the plates do that they just redid? Like, what is that?
That plate gives them. I was listening to a conversation about the plate has to do with. Basically, it's giving them a true 0 point when you set the car ride height, telemetry, and everything. When you grade a building, for example, and you're building a house, I don't think anybody's ever been in a house that's perfectly level or all your rooms are perfectly square because of human error. That's where what these setup plates are supposed to do. They're supposed to be like true 0, true north, like your like perfection point. So anything that you set up on that plate should start from basically what, in my world for IT stuff, I have like a gold copy or like the baseline. Well, the setup plate is the baseline. So anything that comes from there, you have a known good starting point. It's not like you're setting it up on a concrete floor and there's a grade and you're not accounting for the grade. So your setup is off different and you might have the camber wrong. You 100% know on that setup plate, it's 100% 0 in terms of its horizontal. Yeah. Or it's flat. Surface. So the settings you put on it are going to be what they should be.
Okay.
So
I was watching that video. I was like, what? Why?
Yeah. At first too, I was like, what's the difference why do you need these setup plates? Like what's wrong with a concrete shop floor that's been graded? And then you look at how many, look at how many team videos we've seen where they don't have setup plates. When you look down Roger Penske, I'm sure his are, and they're just they're colored differently and decorated differently. When you look at that row of Penske cars with the setup plates, and each car's got like a 10-foot bay, the car is 6 feet wide. And you got 4 feet on each side of each car that you can walk around, and roll carts in and out. I mean, his is like the pinnacle of what it should be, I think. But yeah. So, what are you doing, Monica? Get over there. Animals can't let me have nothing. This one's got to cry and whine. This one's got to dig at stuff over in the carpet. So that's all the rules, all the big rule changes and the law drama. Anything else you want to talk about? You're fine. You're okay.
I believe SiriusXM said the other day that Corey LaJoie's PR team announced that there is news coming soon. But that's all they said. There wasn't any hint of anything, but apparently there is news, but we just don't know when, where, what, how.
Yeah, from what I saw, the lady that commented, it showed up on the Corey LaJoie site that I'm on. And she it was not his, it wasn't his actual PR lady, but she goes, I'm not at liberty to give out any details as to the announcement that will be coming, but there is an announcement upcoming for what Corey LaJoie will have coming on or coming up.
My question to you, Chris, you are the Corey LaJoie expert in this trinity of people here. How do you think that with the sponsored dollars that he has, Schluter Systems, Celsius, who else does he have?
Who else? Didn't he Built Bar? Yeah.
Does he still have Built Bar, Chris?
I don't know.
That I'm not sure.
Okay, so
that's
with with the few sponsors he has, I'll just get to the question. Do you think that he and his dad could field like an Xfinity team just for him, or a truck?
I think a truck, money wise. I don't know that he could field it. Xfinity is more expensive, but I think a truck is doable.
Yeah,
Depending on who he'd have to lease stuff
I,
from.
I think a truck would be feasible for him and Randy.
Yeah.
With the sponsorship that he would bring along with him from Schluter, Celsius, because even when he went over to, I know there was already a bit of a tie there, but when he went over to Rick Ware, that he still had Celsius on the car.
Yeah.
Schluter was there. There were four. I know at least four of the sponsors that he had that went with him.
One of the things I know, I know it doesn't exist in Cup, and I don't think it does in Xfinity, but I know it does in Truck. Truck uses crate engines. They have they all use the same motor.
Yeah.
Like there's not.
I don't believe they all do. They're all pretty much all of them do, but there are a few teams that do not.
But the reason why I say that is in terms of gaining entry, that's one big area where a lot of teams spend money, an A tier motor, a B tier motor, a C tier motor. In trucks, at least
Elmore engines.
Yeah, they would be able to, a truck is for the most part a lower entry point barrier of entry to get into.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, if I'm Corey, if I don't have a deal with anybody in a decent truck ride or a decent Xfinity ride, I wouldn't go down to ARCA. ARCA's a joke, in my opinion. They need
be champion
stuff to straighten it up. I'd go to Cars Tour. I'd go figure out what I need to do to run Cars Tour because it's a fantastic. It's run by 4 real racers. It's run and owned by Burton, Marks, Junior, and Harvick. So it's a good series because they've got a good investment. An invested interest to make it good. The guys that are running well over in the Cars Tour, Zilich, McReynolds, Gilliland, Quaffle, like all those guys that were running Cars Tour, Barry, now they're all getting into Cup. They're all getting into Xfinity. They're all getting in top rides. So to me, if I have to go backwards, I'm leaving the top 3 altogether. If I can't get in in a good ride in either of the 3, I'd rather go back to Cars Tour because if I perform there, I've got 2 team owners in Junior and Marks watching me. I've got Burton, who is like the nicest guy in the garage. Everybody listens to him. If he likes you, you're probably fine. And then you got Harvick, who still owns KHI Management. So if he's managing, if he takes an interest and manages you, he can help you get into a good deal. So I think you're better off to go down to somewhere with those guys than you are to go off to K&N, to go off to ARCA.
The thing is, he's running out of time age-wise. He's 32.
I agree. I believe. I agree.
And
but I mean, Barry's older
you're
too.
Talking. Well, but he's in Cup. He's got a ride. He's got a multi-year contract. So
right, but Barry was older when he came in too. But because he was able to, he performed well in cars. Then he performed well in JRM equipment. But his connections with JRM and cars got him into JRM equipment.
Yeah.
I think if Corey were to go back down, it was just bad luck of the draw timing when he came in. I mean, the group he was with, he was able to outrun Larson and Bubba and Blaney and all these guys he was running in those lower series with plenty of times. It's just there were not enough seats for him. So if I'm gonna try and get back in a seat, to me, if I was his guy, I would present that as a serious option. He might laugh me out of the room, but you tell me what you think, Chris. But I don't think it's a bad option.
I don't either. I think if he's not going to go, which we already know all the seats are filled, if he's not going to go somewhere like JRM or JGR, why at this point? Because if you look at 95% of the season, if you're not driving for one of those 2 teams, why go to the Xfinity Series?
Yeah.
There's a lot more opened up. There's a lot more opportunity. It's a lot more fair playing field to, like you said, field the truck. I mean, money-wise, talent-wise, I mean, I think overall talent wise, especially with the experience he has in the Cup Series in driving for smaller teams, somebody like his dad to go through and invest and almost try and build a team around him, I think would be amazing, because you could come in affordably into a series that he's going to go out and he's not going to tear your shit up. Unfortunately, it's the Truck Series. You got to worry about everyone else tearing your shit up. But Corey's not going to go out and tear your shit up. He's just not going to. He wrecked a lot of race cars this last year, but I think that's because he knew his back was against the wall at that point, and he was putting himself in positions that he normally just wouldn't do.
Yep, I agree. I think he let the pressure get to him, and
and unfortunately, he didn't keep doing what he had been doing. He tried to overcompensate instead of just being him. That was all he needed to do, was just keep being him. And I think he shot his. I think he pulled a Larson and stepped on his own dick.
Yep.
Larson Hocevar running well screwed him up.
Yep. I think he tried to drive beyond the limits of what he could do with his equipment, while others were doing more with the same equipment, and it bit him. It ended up costing him a ride, or at least the opportunity to keep his ride.
I personally think the writing was on the wall the year prior when Hocevar got in that car and drove past him while he was in the 9 car at Gateway and moved up in the top 10, well into the top 10, and then had a brake failure. But he was in the top 10 with his car while he was in this premier car.
But on the same hand, I'm also going to bring up even one, and I do got to say, for as much as I don't like the guy, the smartest thing I think I've ever heard come out of Chase Elliott's mouth, he made the comment, I don't think it was a fair evaluation of what Corey can actually do, because he finished in the same position I did in that car the year before.
Yep.
He goes, we don't perform at that track. That is not a good track for us. But I think the aesthetics overall, like Blake just brought up, looked horrible. But that was probably the worst possible race that they could have. And I was even afraid of that when they announced he was going to that track. I'm like, dude, they've run like absolute trash at that race. Yep. And that's the one race you're going to give Corey an opportunity in the 9 car.
Yep.
He could have said no.
Well, I get that, but if it was you, would you have said no?
At that track, yeah.
I don't know.
Honestly,
I'd have a hard time saying no. I've wanted my entire life to drive for Rick Hendrick, for JGR, for these top tier teams.
Well, he made the mistake of going in that 83 car his rookie year. That's his doing. He should have went to trucks. Larson ran a part-time truck schedule in 12. He went to a full-time schedule in 13 in Xfinity, and then went to Cup in 14. Meanwhile, in 12, I believe it was 12 or 13, LaJoie was screwing about in Cup and an underfunded team, and he's still there.
And the sad part is that's also the disadvantage of having the LaJoie name. Just like with Kyle Petty, I think that was a giant disadvantage to him having the Petty name. Is what you've all, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've all listened to the interview where they talked about Kyle says, my dad didn't let me run the lower series. If you're going to run the Cup car.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Kyle, I think, had talent, but I think that was also played to a huge disadvantage for him, just like I think it did for Corey.
Yep.
Yeah, but also he was with Sabco, and I love Felix Sabatas to death, but Sabco was not your top rated team. I mean, it was not a RCR or a Hendrick. It was
neither is
RCR. It was a one car team, and at that time, that would be like being in my opinion, it'd be like being in a Spire car now.
Well, I think I agree with you. I think it's the same thing to some extent. To your point about the LaJoie name, I think it worked against Dale Earnhardt Jr. You could say the same thing. He was expected to come in there and be his father. Yeah, he ran the Xfinity stuff and he did well because he
won
was
back-to-back championships.
right. He did well and he was in DEI equipment. Had he not been in DI, the difference is he was in his dad's equipment. Kyle was not in his dad's equipment. Kyle was in other people's equipment, and that equipment arguably was not to the same caliber as, if you take family name history, Dale Jr. under DEI, Dale goes and gets the best people. Petty, or even look at Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is going to be successful because he's in Joe Gibbs Racing stuff. He was successful in Xfinity. He would have been successful in trucks had he been there, but they just put him straight into Xfinity. Pretty much, he was successful in JGR purposed cars in ARCA, and he was on the verge of making the playoffs this year, and he's been on the verge of winning. He will win.
He did make the playoffs,
but it will work against. It's worked against him too at the same vein because he's only ever known good stuff. So, I mean, to the point we talked about a couple episodes ago where he said, with the people moving around, he's getting a new crew chief. He felt like he hit a ceiling with this guy. Dude, you are 2 years in. You don't even know what your ceiling is yet, and you already think you know better. So that to me is like you're young and dumb right now. And all of them are. They all think they know better. If you just give me somebody else, I can run better. And then sometimes they get that opportunity and they don't. They actually run worse. Like Dale Jr. admits all the time, like picking his crew chiefs and not listening to some of the decisions made for him. Instead, breaking up with the Uris because he wanted to, or not staying with them, or not really buying into what Lance McGrew was wanting him to do, like worked against him. Not taking it seriously. So you can see these examples all over the place.
At least Junior's admitted that though.
Yeah.
How many will never admit it?
Yeah, a lot of them will never admit it. Like Corey forever. My wife. So I listen to these podcasts when we go on trips. I'll be driving. I'm listening to them. Before it was the Money Lap, it was Sunday Money, and my wife would be listening to Corey, and she's like, he just sounds like a whiner. She's like, has he done anything yet? Like, has he actually done anything? Like, what did he do at the lower series? I'm like, he didn't do any of them. He went basically straight to Cup. Yeah. So he's always complaining about, being in an underfunded car. And if I had this, I could do this, which I enjoyed all of his content. I'm sure that's part of why you like, because he's so open for the same reason I enjoy Accident Detrimental with Denny and, the aspect he gives us to the teams. But I think what really hurt him, even though it was a Hendrick opportunity, was all this time he's been saying, if I just could get in a quality car, I could do this. Then he gets in one and he doesn't deliver. Regardless of whether or not it was a fair evaluation or not per Chase. The fact is, this whole time he's been building up, if I got in better equipment, I could do better. Well, Spire was on this uptick and he didn't do as good when Hocevar started getting in there.
Yeah.
He got in a Hendrick car and he didn't deliver. So it's hard for, I would think, for most fans to have any sympathy for him, first off, because he has a track record of saying if X, then Y.
Yeah.
I've always been driving with this chip and this detriment, and then I get these opportunities and I don't deliver. So if I'm a fan and I have a problem doing that, how do I feel about it as a team owner? All right, Hendrick's not going to put him in there because he hasn't done anything. But I mean, we've talked about it before. He has no wins at any of the lower series. No, he has nothing for me to hang my hat on besides. I mean, he's good with sponsors. Yes, he's good with people. He's proven he's marketable. He's proven, he's got the PR side of the things down. I think he's better than some of the guys that have rides. But some of the guys that do have rides do have trophies in other series, and Corey doesn't. That's hard to overcome. And I think at a point, especially back to the money part with the lawsuit, now that we know there's a base money amount, is if that money number continues to go up with the next charter agreement, we talked about it before, I think team owners are going to have the ability to go out there and get the guys they want. So you're definitely not going to get there if you don't have a stack of trophies to your name in various disciplines to show that you are this world-class talent. I think that the days of getting in a Cup car and doing what Corey did for as long as he did, that's definitely over. Like, I don't see that happening again. I also don't see like a Justin Haley thing happening again either. Like,
well, and yeah, Justin Haley's another one. I mean, that just absolutely baffles me. I mean, nothing against Justin Haley, but where's he put the numbers up that Corey hasn't either?
right. I mean, yeah, he won in Xfinity, but he's done this. He did the same thing that Corey did in Spire cars and in prior cars like Go Fast and others, Inspire and in in Colleague, and like, okay, I don't tear stuff up and I finish better than I should in Rick Ware cars. So I'm going to give you a better ride. Well, Corey was doing the same thing, but Corey is getting shoved down the road to wherever we don't know yet.
After helping
Haley's being rewarded
to where you're at.
Yeah. So
yeah, that was kind of a slap in the face. But I guess the perfect example, or I guess when you look at it, other than he's had more opportunities in lower series, but when are these guys ever going to, I mean, on the same hand, I can see Corey's argument where he was teammates for a long time with Alex Bowman. And even when Alex Bowman got put in the Hendrick car, it's not like he came out and set the world on fire.
Yep.
Down the pole, ran top 5 at Phoenix, an 88 car. Almost won a race.
Yeah, but he also got more than just one opportunity too. And how many people are you going to put in the Hendrick car, hence Danica Patrick, and go sit on the pole at a restrictor plate track?
Yeah. Well, since we're on the topic of,
I think if you put Corey LaJoie in the Hendrick car at Daytona, especially watching what Corey's been able to do at drafting.
Yeah, but sitting on a pole at Daytona and sitting on a pole at Phoenix are two totally different things.
I get that too.
Daytona pole is all car. Phoenix's car and skill. I'm not trying to. I like Corey a lot, but if you look at the end of this year or like into summer, into fall, there was a string of races where Hocevar and Zane Smith, a rookie that had a terrible beginning of the season, were finishing in the top 10, and Corey's 25th.
I know, but
that string of races, I think also. All right, I've got Hocevar in 3rd, I've got Zane in 5th, and then I got the 7 all the way back here, and then I've got Zane in 9th and Hocevar in 5th. You know, like why is Corey not also doing this? They had to have been looking at that string of race. There was a string of races where it continued, like it was like 4 or 5 races in a row where those two cars were not just ahead of Corey, way ahead.
But yeah. I'll also bring up that was also after the announcement that, if you go back, that kind of coincided with the announcement that Rodney was coming over. And I think at that point it wasn't right off the bat, but I think once that realization came through, I almost think I'm not trying to make excuses other than I think at that point he was trying way too hard. And when something would go wrong, whether it was speeding, they had a bad pit stop, they got behind the 8 ball, and then, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to be here next year anyway, so who gives a fuck at this point now?
Yeah.
I was a mix of both. He would try way too hard, get himself in trouble, get behind the 8 ball in the race, and then, now we're back in 25th. I don't fucking care anymore.
Yep. He'd qualify up front, road racing.
Yep.
Be up there in the top 5, top 10 to qualify and do something stupid.
Yeah.
Let it get in his head and then compound the mistake.
Yep.
Instead of, all right, take a breath. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. We proved we've got the speed. We could do this. Let's just take a minute. We'll get there. So
it's just out qualifying those guys, but the race results showed garbage. It showed jack shit.
Yeah.
So the speed was there. It just, there was way too much stuff went on there. And I think the biggest heartbreaker for me, and I think where he ultimately not lost the Spire ride, but where I think he ultimately just lost the ambition and the drive for the rest of the entire season. And if you've listened to some of these other podcasts, I know I don't think Blake. I think he's listened to a couple, but I don't know if you listened to the episode where Corey talked about the fact that he himself, and I think with as long as he was with Sparks, I think they were together for 5 or 6 years, not just at Spire, but I think him and Sparks had even worked together before they got to Spire.
They were at the 32 car together
as a crew chief driver duo. Corey even made the comment, as much as I love Sparks, he goes, I wanted this change and I wasn't given the opportunity, which kind of brings me back to, and I had even brought it up before Corey made that comment, because Flores is the one that asked him, and he goes, I was excited that entire time. I was so excited they were bringing Rodney Childers over, and the excitement I had internally, thinking I was going to finally get an opportunity to see what it's like. As much as I love Sparks, to work with another crew chief to get this going, he goes, and I don't even get, I'll never see it. Which is where I was absolutely confused why they didn't, at least when you knew all 3 of those cars were not going to make the chase. Why through the last 10 races of the season did you not at least swap crew chiefs to see what that did? What change?
Yeah, I agree. We see all the big teams do it all the time. I don't know why they didn't. I was excited when they said, all right, Rodney's going over there. I'm like, that's going to be good for Corey. Like, no matter whether he's the crew chief for Corey or not, like that would be good for Corey. You're going to have a championship winning crew chief, a guy who's taking guys who were just regular race winners and made them, or people that hadn't won races in forever, and put them in contention to win. I mean, he did great for Michael Waltrip Racing, with the 55 for both Mark Martin and for Brian Vickers. He delivered. So, and then he came over there, and in his first year, like Harvick and them, they took Hendrick stuff, and they were the fastest thing on track every week. The only people that beat them were themselves, or just luck, lug nut taken out a valve stem or whatever. Like most of the time, they were the fastest thing out there. So I was genuinely excited based off of that. Like, okay, he's going to go to Spire. He's going to have the ability to kind of curtail, because it's a young team, this team around Corey. And if it doesn't work, then you get a different driver. But we're going to find out what Corey can really do, because he's going to have a guy that is genuinely, top level. Other than Corey talking about Sparks, I'd never heard of it. The true crew chiefs you hear about, the Blickensderfers, the Uris, the hell is his damn name?
Zipadellis, any of them.
Yep, the Zipadellis, like you hear about these guys working their way up, and there's a lot of these guys you don't hear about, but you don't hear about them for reasons.
I posted a video. I think I posted it on Facebook earlier today. You guys can go back.
There we go.
Rodden. Go back and look at I posted a video where it was Chad Canal speaking up in a team meeting. I believe it was early Hendrick.
Yeah, I said that to you. It was when he was a pit crew member.
Yeah. Was it at Hendrick, or were they still?
They were talking about how people need to be on the wall and be ready for a pit stop the moment the caution comes out.
But was that for Hendrick, or I wasn't paying a lot of attention, or was that because
that was for the 24 car?
Okay. Yeah, and it's just it's crazy to see. Yeah, a lot of these guys don't. You never hear about them. I mean, they can be great in the sport. You just never hear about them.
Well, did you separately? I don't know how long we've been going. Probably 2 hours.
2 hours at least.
Did you guys ever go back and? I know I talked to you about it, Blake, on the phone. Did you ever go back and listen to the Mr. Hendrick interview with Kelly?
I forgot to. I need to though.
Well, one of the big things he talked about to that point about specifically about Chad and them, when he's promoting people, he's talking about from business, whether it's car business or race team business. he generally doesn't go out and hire people from other teams. He likes to build and promote from within because he feels like that's how you get people that buy into your culture, and you weed out the people who are not buying into what you want. So um, to that point, like that's why you know, you don't see when teams get laid off or teams get shut down, like all the SHR guys. For the most part, if they probably weren't Hendrick before, I don't think he probably, if I had to look at his new employees, I bet you there weren't a lot that came from SHR, if any.
No.
Because unless they were already Hendrick folks before, he's probably not going to take them because his culture, he promotes people. They were going to want a position if they were already a crew chief or already, other than Rodney Childers, who was under Chevy and SHR. Like, I can't see him going and getting somebody and bringing them over because they didn't come through his process that he uses to promote people, to figure out where their successes are and make sure they are buying into whether it's the business philosophy or the race philosophy. Either way, but it's also what's helped him be so successful. So I just thought that was interesting that he brought that up specifically about how he gets people where all these other teams, yeah, they promote from within, but a lot of them, you always hear the moves where they're going and getting people. Spire goes and gets a bunch of people from SHRs. They're shutting down. JGR's hired some. RFK's hired a bunch. Then RFK.
Well, if you remember, this is the Wayback Machine. We're talking 24 years, but the 24 crew, the Rainbow Warriors, were the first crew ever to be stolen by another team. Robert Yates stole them and brought them over to the 88, and that kind of goes to show you Rick Hendrick don't steal from other teams. Nope. He just promoted more people.
Yep. He said, fine, I'll just make more. I've got talent. I'll promote it. I'll improve on it, and I'll make more people. So, all right. Anything else we want to talk about? I don't think there's anything else I can think of.
I think we've exhausted all options.
Well, since you're bringing up exhausted, it's apparently nap time again.
It is nap time.
Wow. No.
If you didn't know, podcast watchers, those all 5 of you that watch us, however many of it is, we all have dogs. You got Blake's baby there. I got my whiny baby here, who my wife has spoiled to the point where he's a crybaby now. And then we saw Chris's dog earlier, so we got them all
in here a little bit.
Yeah. So, I enjoyed that conversation. That was a long one, but
yeah, it was very long.
We covered a lot of really good stuff. Who knew that they would give us so much good information? The second weekend of January.
That was some good stuff for sure.
Do you think we're done with rules and changes yet? I guess is my last question.
Moody mentioned he was surprised that there wasn't anything changed with the playoffs. You brought it up earlier. Yeah. I think there's still time, possibly. I'd say if it's not brought to us by next week, we're not going to have any change.
Yeah, I think you've got maybe 1.5 weeks left to get news out for any changes that pertain to competition side of things before you're kind of locked in, because then at that point we're at the Clash and it's Super Bowl time. So at that point you're pretty much locked into what you were going to do for the year. So I think if there's anything left for that, that's going to be it.
Well, I guess we all need to be on the social media sites pushing some of the shit that we've talked about then, because some of these rules that they're trying to implement right now are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yep. I've made some comments, but I'm going to, once this is uploaded and in our feed, I'll tag it to my profile on Twitter, and y'all can do the same thing. I don't know if you have a Twitter profile, Chris, or not, honestly.
He does. It's Chris Berry 035675432. A bunch of numbers behind it because he's lazy.
Chris Berry, 30 billion.
Yeah, I still don't know.
Pretty much.
Damn, otherwise I would go in and try and change it.
You can change it. You just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Otherwise, if I knew
I'll walk you through it. That's the point. When I'm not napping.
You're napping.
Okay. After he's had another power nap and he can recharge.
Yeah. No, I'm done with naps for the day.
Once he dusts off his.
For those of you that obviously don't know, I get up at 2:30 in the morning for work. So when I get off, I need a nap. So these two can just kiss my ass.
Oh, boo-hoo. You're up working. You're up doing more than most of us do before 9 a.m. Look at you.
Essentially,
You're a
yes.
hard worker. Also, you
Yes.
can put the eggs in the egg spot and the milk in the milk spot. Don't put my
Yes.
milk in my egg spot. No.
Forklift driver problems, man.
Lord.
All right. Well, myself and the fellow Costco members, we all appreciate your hard work, Blake. We appreciate
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd say I appreciate it, but we don't have a Costco here, so I can give a shit less.
Sam's Club. No.
We don't have one of those either.
BJ.
Thanks everybody for watching this far.
Yeah, if you've made it this far, you're probably like, what the hell's wrong with these three?
Yeah.
So, all right, gents, that was fun. I'll get
Absolutely. See y'all in 2 weeks.
Yep. See y'all in 2 weeks. I'll be in DC next week. If anything good comes up, we'll make some stuff and we'll record next weekend when I get back.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys again, man. Thank you.
Oh yeah. We're trying to do it as much.
We definitely should have recorded last night instead of today.
Well,
So,
why? You wouldn't have to wait to get done with your nap then, or what?
Exactly. Wouldn't have had your 1 cent.
All right.